And I'm using iPads. I did see Virginia briefly earlier on, so I thought she was actually on the call, but right. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Planning Policy and Built Heritage Working Party on today, Monday, the 14th of December, and a particular welcome to our speakers to today's proceedings. I just want to remind everyone that I would like you to disconnect your video link and go on mute if you are not a member of the working party until I ask you to join the meeting to address to address us this morning. It just makes it much easier to follow who wants to contribute. And in that regard, I have Emma Denny and Linda Yarham from Democratic Services to assist me this morning. And I would just ask you as well if you can possibly use the blue hand function to indicate that you want to speak to the meeting if you can. I've just got a couple of announcements that I want to make. The first one is that I am intending to make a slight amendment to the order in the agenda. I think given the level of interest and scrutiny on the site allocations for Blakeney and Munsley, that we take that item first. So we're talking about item 10 being first, and then the rest of the items will be as printed. I expect that we will need a break probably at 11:30 for 15 minutes. So I'm intending to do that given the length of the agenda. And as regards voting, I'm going to call for a recorded vote on the two site allocations items. The rest of the items will be by show of hands. Otherwise, we're going to be here for most of the day. So I think that covers the order of things this morning. If I can ask Linda if we have any apologies for absence, item 1 on the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have two apologies, one from Councillor Clive Stockton with Councillor Angie Fitch-Tillett as his substitute, and also from Councillor Tim Adams with Councillor Wendy Fredericks as his substitute. Thank you.
Thank you. I will defer the public questions slot for the moment until we get to item 10, because I think those two should go together. So I'm going to move to item 3, the minutes. Everyone's presumably had a chance to read the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any questions and comments regarding those minutes? No? No. Well, I propose them as a true and accurate record. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Grove-Jones, I think was the first to show. And can we please raise our hands to indicate that we approve them? I think that's unanimous. Linda, is it? Yeah.
I believe it is, thank you.
I believe it is, yeah. So item 4, items of urgent business. I don't believe we have any. If you just could confirm that for me. I think silence equals consent, I think, on that. So item 5, declarations of interest. We have had some circulated material from Mr. David Mack and his land agency, whose name I forget. I think most members have had that, so if I can perhaps declare that on behalf of everybody. Otherwise, are there any other interests which members wish to declare pecuniary or otherwise? Please show your hand. Councillor Dixon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In addition to that which you've already mentioned, I wonder if we shouldn't also make mention of the numerous emails that we've had. I believe that's gone to all of us. So I think it would be right to acknowledge that in addition, there has been over the passage of time, a whole series of emails that have added, if you like, to our sum total of knowledge.
Mm. Yes, thank you. That's a good point. I accept that. Councillor Fredericks and then Councillor Heinrich.
Obviously with Munsey, I'm the ward member, heavily involved in the community and know the farmer that owns the field. I'm just wondering if I'm able to vote on that. Perhaps Linda or Emma can advise on that too.
Yes, please, Emma. Could you advise Councillor Fredericks on that point? No, we don't seem to have a link. Linda, can I ask for your opinion on that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Provided that Mrs. Frederick's interest is merely an acquaintance, that would be fine.
Thank you very much for that confirmation. Is that understood, Councillor Fredericks? Yeah.
Yeah, they are friends of mine, but
Yeah. Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's great. Can I move to Councillor Heinrich and then Councillor Fitch-Tillett afterwards?
Thank you, Chairman. It's just in relation to item 11 on North Walsham allocations. It should be noted that I'm also a member of North Walsham Town Council.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
Yeah, I also know the landowner quite well at Munsley. We're not particularly close friends, but I do know him. Also, I am Vice Chairman of the Norfolk Coast Partnership and this council's representative on the Wash and North Norfolk Marine Partnership, both of which have quite lengthy inputs into the landscape character assessment.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think that concludes all disclosures of interest under item 5. Item 6, update on matters from previous meeting. I have none. Don't believe there are any scheduled. So if we move back to item 2, public questions, the opportunity for the members of the public who have registered with us to address the meeting this morning. And I propose to start with a speaker from the Parish Council at Blakeney, and then move to each of the registered speakers in alphabetical order. That's just so everyone knows and can prepare for that process under item 2. So if I can invite the representative from Blakeney Parish Council to speak to agenda item 10, which is the site allocation for Blakeney. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Blakeney Parish Council has considered the respective merits of the sites south of Kingsway and at Oddfellows Field. The Kingsway site is our preferred one. However, further information, primarily site plans, has recently been tabled, and Blakeney Parish Council has not had the opportunity to discuss this. It is important to note that when the original sites were considered by NMDC officials and the Parish Council, the Oddfellows site in its current proposed form was not in the frame. There has therefore been no public consultation on it. The reasons for our choice of the Kingsway site are: we agree the analysis by NMDC officials. As has been said, sea and marsh views would be blocked by development of Oddfellows Field. The view from Kettle Hill is iconic and is one of the first views visitors to Blakeney have. The Oddfellows site would involve construction of an extensive roadway running to the rear of Harbour Way. The traffic using it would cause disruption to local residents and any lighting attached to it would run counter to dark sky policies. The parish council view is that such a roadway should not be considered. The most direct access to the village would be along the busy Morstan Road. Children living on the site would therefore need to walk along the main road and cross other busy roads to get to school. If pedestrian access was facilitated along Oddfellows Field and into Queen's Close, as is proposed, that would compound the problems there. Queen's Close is already dangerous because of volumes of traffic, parked cars and pedestrians, particularly when the Glaven Centre is operating. The land behind Kingsway, on the other hand, would mirror development on the other side of Langham Road. The view of the church would be preserved and there would be no block to sea and marsh views. There is a footpath running along the length of the site which would allow children living there to walk directly to Wiverton Road and the school, and there is easy access to the village amenities by walking down Langham Road to the shop, surgery, etc. The site could be shielded by planned planting. The parish council recognises there are arguments both ways, but the important thing for Blakeney is affordable housing. We do not need more large, costly or second homes, so it is important that the economics of the proposals are such that the development can provide the anticipated proportion of affordable housing. We believe that would best be achieved by the Kingsway site. However, to provide full transparency, the committee may decide that the final decision should be delayed by 1 month to allow the parish council to consider the further information tabled. That would be done at our meeting on the 12th of January, as would ensure full awareness within the village of both options. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. It was remiss of me. I should have said that each speaker has got 3 minutes and they will be timed. So thank you very much, Mrs. Tew, for being within that time. I don't think it's practical, unfortunately, to delay it for a month. We've already had a previous agenda consideration of this in July, and the overall picture is one that the local plan has got to stick to a fairly rigid timetable to be delivered during the midsummer of next year for presentation to the inspector. So I think the decision has got to be taken today, just so that you know that. Can I please move to the next speaker? And if you would kindly just announce your name and if you are representing any organisation before you speak. And you have 3 minutes. So I think this will be probably Mr. Albany as the next speaker. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me, sir?
I can, Mr. Albany. Thank you.
Thank you. In July, councillors voted 7-2 for Site 1, the Oddfellows site, and 7-2 against Site 4. During that meeting, Mr. Ashwell made the following statement, and I quote, "There is not much difference between the visual impact of either site, but what tips the balance in terms of Site 4 is the need for a separate vehicle access of Langham Road. And for Site 1, and this forms the positive recommendation for Site 4 and a negative recommendation for Site 1. Councillor Ward, speaking for the parish council, who confirmed on 2 previous occasions that either site was acceptable, that the real focus was on practical deliverability and viability to ensure that affordable housing was built. These 2 areas, site access and viability, have now been comprehensively and satisfactorily resolved. 30 houses with 11 affordable can be built on Site 1. Mr. Ashwell also stated, and I quote, "Site 1 was a pretty strong contender early on and probably identified as the preferred location. And we did conclude that it had a lesser impact on the landscape, particularly on the lower part of the site. Yet today, having seen each developer's designs, officers still maintain that Site 4 is a less harmful option. Why is this? When Site 4 is going to be built right next to the road and thus very prominent to anyone coming into Blakeney. Conversely, Site 1, the nearest visible house will be at 180 metres from the road. And visitors coming down Langham Road will probably be unaware that there are 30 houses there. Reviewing the site layout plans, Site 4's 1.5 hectare site is barely adequate for 30 houses, has no public amenity space at all. It's high density, suburban cul-de-sac, only connected to the village via the main road. And Blakeney does not deserve such an unimaginative housing estate in an AONB landscape. Site 1 is more than double the area of Site 4. The 30 houses will be surrounded by 1.5 hectares of public green space and amenity with extensive grasslands, tree and hedge planting. This green space is equal to the size of the total area of Site 4. And careful site layout and design will protect the near and distant views over Blakeney and the seascape beyond. A new footpath and cycleway will connect Morstan Road to Langham Road and potentially to Queen's Coast, and thus connecting to the village centre, together with new connection to footpath 6 and 17. In conclusion, Site 1 is an outstanding opportunity for Blakeney, providing new housing, a new landscape protection zone for the public to enjoy, and new safe pathways to access the village. As your papers say today, site selection requires the exercise of councillors' planning judgments and the weighing of considerations, especially regarding green infrastructure policies. The 1.5 hectares of green space, housing design,
3 minutes.
village access.
Thank you, Mr. Albany.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got to stop you there, unfortunately. Thank you very much. Right, so if we can move to the next speaker, please, Linda, and if we can time the 3 minutes accordingly. Thank you.
Hello there. I assume it's myself speaking next. Before I start, my name is John Fairley. I'm a Chartered Town Planner from Cretan and Coast Developments, and I'm speaking on behalf of Fleur Hill LLP with respect to Site 01.
Thank you.
Thank you. Following the selection of BLA 04A within the first draft local plan, the purpose of today's presentation is to provide you with further evidence in order to allow for a full assessment of the suitability of BLA 01. The foundation for this assessment is provided by the adopted and draft landscape character assessments and the adopted Blakeney Conservation Area Appraisal 2019. We have submitted our assessment for your consideration and wish to highlight the following. The adopted and draft landscape character assessments are consistent in their findings, such that the adopted allocation should avoid a hard edge of generic bungalows or modern houses by re-establishing the treed character relationship with Blakeney. It should integrate into the village, be sensitive to long coastal views, and avoid competition with the church tower, so that it remains a key landmark feature on the skyline. The adopted Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan requires the view of St Nicholas's Church from Langham Road to be preserved, and the views of Blakeney from the south and southwest to be preserved, including for views of the church and marshes. We have tested 01 and 04A against these criteria and have determined that BLA 01 can host a development that meets the allocation and affordable housing requirements with landscaped access from Langham Road that quickly re-establishes the treed character of Blakeney from the south that was removed by Averset Way. The topography of the site, established through a full topographic survey and LiDAR data, allows for a scheme with open space and landscaping features that reflects the density of development across the village. 01 will blend with the existing settlement pattern and not appear as an add-on to the village. It can also provide footpath connectivity with Morstan Road. Importantly, this work, based on real data, demonstrates that the important views of the church, marshes, and sea when viewed from the south are maintained. On the other hand, we have found that 04 will create a hard edge to the village where currently there is an established tree line. It will interrupt the setting of the church, contrary to the landscape character assessment and conservation area appraisal, provide no connectivity with the adjacent residential streets, and change the character of the approach to the village, which cannot be quickly mitigated through planting to the site levels. An allocation at BLA 04 would therefore conflict with the evidence base to the local plan. In contrast, it's clear that a development at 01 is without this conflict. We therefore request that the working group consider the allocation for Blakeney in line with the new evidence that we have provided. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Fairley. Thank you for that. Can we invite the next speaker in, please, Linda? For 3 minutes.
Yes, that's Mr. Bryant.
Mr. Bryant. Thank you. Mr. Bryant, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, I will. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Bryant. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the committee. I speak having owned a house in Kingsway for over 12 years. I've been coming to North Norfolk all my life and plan to retire here. In a situation such as this, vested interests will always have strong opinions, but this must not be a popularity contest between the two sites. Surely the most important factors are firstly, a site which meets the short and longer term needs of the village. Site L1 is undoubtedly preferable in this regard, as there would be the opportunity for more houses in the future should they be required. Not only that, but site O1 is already much more connected to the village than site O4, and the plans put forward by the developers show how even more connected site O1 would be with footpaths and a cycleway. These plans provide the houses required in a superbly landscaped way, beautifully laid out in the environment, and in addition will give the village 1.5 hectares of public green space. Surely this is an opportunity not to be missed. Secondly, the preferred site must have the minimum environmental and visual impact on the landscape which the plans for site O1 achieves. In contrast, the plans for site O4 would spoil the views to the east as you enter Blakeney, and I know these views are very important to the council. I know this because on the advice of my tree surgeon, I needed to remove a Scots pine at the rear of my garden, which borders site O4. I sought permission to do this, of course, and the council officer told me that I should only remove one tree as the view of the Scots pines was something that they valued very highly, as indeed do I. I would suggest that equally important in maintaining the unspoilt view across the field, now known as possible site O4, is the view to our magnificent church. Development on this greenfield site could well block the view of both the Scotch pines and the church. And to emphasise the significance of this opinion, it must be borne in mind that the Conservation Area Report, which, let's not forget, is an adopted report, says views of landmark buildings, particularly the church and Blakeney Hotel, will be preserved. Therefore, building on site O4 would go totally against what has been agreed in the Conservation Report. My final point is that when the tasteful development with a mix of housing was carried out to the west of the Langham Road, the land was made available through the good offices of the Oddfellows Friendly Society. They have now made further such land available, and surely it would be very disingenuous to not accept this offer in favour of an unspoilt field, which would, as I have said, not meet the criteria of the adopted Conservation Area Report. And in offering that land for building, they have sought a developer that has come up with fresh ideas to meet the housing brief and much more besides. This you will have seen from studying their proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Thank you for your time on that. Thank you. So we moved to the next speaker. Linda, please.
It's Mr. Foreman.
Mr. Foreman. Do we have Mr. Foreman?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can, Mr. Foreman. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
You have 3 minutes, if I can just remind you.
Thank you. I ask councillors to consider the following points of objection at today's meeting, and thus not endorse BLA04A, but now reconfirm BLA01B as the preferred allocated site. I have been a permanent resident in Kingsway, Blakeney for 20 years, and in that time I have seen many changes to the village. Few, I must say, for the better. I would not question the need for affordable homes for local people, but I regret the necessity for more expensive properties being built to finance them, and these in turn sold as second homes. If such homes must be built, let us at least mitigate the environmental and visual impact that such developments would have on Blakeney by placing them in the most unobtrusive position. For this reason, I urge you to reject Site 4 and support Site 1, where the ground levels are lower, and in the past, Site 1B on the west side of Langham Road has twice been selected within the current local plans. 7 councillors at your July 13th meeting, rather than rubber stamping what was placed in front of them, agreed with the information presented by Mr. Albany and voted against Site 4. These facts have not changed, so neither should your decision. The decision you make at this meeting could scar Blakeney's landscape for years to come. For these reasons, I urge you to reject BLA04A and thus reconfirm your previous choice of BLA01B. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Can we admit the next speaker, please, Linda?
Next is Mr. Hadley.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hadley?
Muted, Mr. Hadley.
Not sure whether we have Mr. Hadley on the call, do we, at the moment?
Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
There you are. Yes, yes, we lost you for a moment, Mr. Hadley.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak if you want to make a start.
Thank you very much. As recommended by the NNDC Planning Policy Manager, I fully agree that BLA 04A be retained as the preferred site within the local plan. Having seen the proposals for BLA 01B, this has now confirmed the worst fears of numerous Blakeney residents that in order to reach this site, a new 250-metre long access road will need to be constructed directly off Langham Road and into open fields. This new access road will not only be approximately 1 metre above existing garden levels, but will result in serious disturbance to existing wildlife and creating noise and air pollution to nearby homes. The dark skies policy will also be compromised, biodiversity affected, and leave a scar on the landscape. As a chartered building surveyor and having considered the BLA 01B viability, there is also the major question of cost. Such a 250-metre access road is likely to cost in the region of £500,000. The viability figures would also indicate that the land cost of BLA 01B will be £1.5 million more expensive than BLA 04A. These two cost factors amount to £2 million, being a total waste of money, as BLA 04A will not incur any such additional cost. Having attended the Blakeney Parish Council meetings, it is evident that the Parish Council have fully discussed and considered this matter and have unanimously voted to retain BLA 04A. As has been debated previously, the most emotive topic is the landscaping impact of both developments on the local area. Having had numerous reports prepared, including NNDC assessment, it is evident there are two main elements: coast, marsh and sea views, or church views. The coast, marsh and sea views are unique to this coastline and especially to Blakeney. The view of St Nicholas Church will not be lost, and any development of BLA 04A will form the village foreground with the church tower rising above, as is common around Blakeney. Losing the coast, marsh and sea views will be a major loss to the character of Blakeney, which thousands of visitors come to enjoy each year. The vote taken today will affect Blakeney forever, so making the right decision will be extremely important. I'm promoting BLA 04A as I fear there are serious access and landscape problems with 01B, together with major concerns over the viability and connectivity to the village. BLA 04A provides the right accommodation in the right location and fully viable. So I'm asking the committee to endorse the recommendation of the NNDC Planning Policy Manager to retain BLA 04A as the preferred site within the local plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hadley, for your contribution. Do we have the next speaker, Linda?
That's Mr. Myers.
Mr. Myers, thank you very much.
I hope I'm on sound, am I?
Yes, Mr. Myers, we can hear you. You have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Right. Good morning, Chair and everyone. I too thoroughly endorse and recommend BLA 04/A as the preferred site. Viability assessments, indicative layout drawings and landscape impact assessments have been received and reviewed. And I'm going to comment on the 4 points laid out by the NNDC relating to overall sustainability of proposals. First, the proximity of day-to-day services. The homeowners under the East Langham Road scheme have a much more convenient and pleasant access to services and facilities. Access to sites, number 2. Both proposed sites have access from the Langham Road and are technically capable of being developed. But it is a huge but. Take a look at the differences. 30 houses on the NND site recommended require half as much take-up of precious greenfield land. Access to the West Langham Road site needs a lengthy and costly piece of roadway to be built, requiring a huge excursion into green agricultural land. This is not a path to go down. Land and roadways with accompanying street lighting, drainage, together with planned footpath and cycleway, cost a lot of money. Any footpath with accompanying cycleway which extends to Morstan Road would incur further expenditure on making the exit safe for walkers and cyclists. Access to BLA 04/A requires no such intrusion. Point 3 refers to the degree of restraints, for example, flood risks, etc. And on this matter, BLA 04/A, being on higher land, must be more resilient and resistant to such risks. Point 4 deals with the impact of wildlife and landscape. I've already alluded to the huge incursion into agricultural land and the resultant loss of views over marshes and Blakeney Harbour, for which the area is noted and to which many visitors are attracted annually. The view of Blakeney Church is not going to be obscured by citing the location of 30 houses on BLA 04. In conclusion, 30 houses with 35% being affordable implies that 18 of those houses can be priced at market value. Surely it doesn't take a mathematician to realise that the quality of houses built on BLA 04/A will be much higher than those on the alternative site, given the huge disparities in the costs involved. Mr. Chair and everyone, BLA 04, the recommended NNDC site, is to be preferred. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. That takes us to the next speaker. Please, Linda.
And the final speaker is Mr. Schofield.
Mr. Schofield, yes, thank you.
Before I start, can I just confirm that with 4 speakers against and 2 speakers for so far, that I will be allowed additional time beyond my 3 minutes?
No, it is a standard 3-minute slot for all speakers.
Okay. Thank you, Chair and members, for allowing me to speak. I speak on behalf of the landowner. I'm Tim Schofield from Raven Land Management. Representatives for both BLA 01 and BLA 04 were asked to present a viability argument to support their case. These have been shared by the council, but there's been little chance to scrutinise other than to make these comments. Many of the assumptions in the BMP report are highly challengeable. For the specification they have provided, the build cost is far too low. Added to this, elevated revenues have been used for the affordable housing, for which there is no justification. Despite the enormous quantity of paperwork submitted on behalf of Oddfellows, it doesn't take long to identify the significant weaknesses in their case. However, viability is not the issue here. The true issue is that both sites are located in an exceptionally sensitive area. The council chose BLA 04 after careful consideration by professional analysts and extensive public consultation. There is strong evidence base for making this choice, such as the HELA, the site assessment documents, and the sustainability appraisal. On top of this, members may wish to consider the following. BLA 04 is 3.7 acres to provide 30 dwellings, a density of 8.10 dwellings per acre, which is appropriate for this context. BLA 01 is 7.76 acres to provide 30 dwellings, which is a density of 3.05, twice the size of BLA 04 and half the density. What this clearly illustrates is that in order to make BLA 01 acceptable, a huge amount of land has to be taken. To provide the 250-metre long roadway and landscape buffering attempting to screen it, and to provide the further artificial screening of the development from the SSI on its western boundary. Indeed, a great tranche of land has been taken out of site BLA 09, a site that was widely discredited during the call for sites and consultation phase. The reason that BLA 04 doesn't need all of this land take is because we're not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. We are not taking large tracts of land in order to try and make our site acceptable. Whatever the promoters of BLA 01 say, this fact is inescapable. At the Working Party meeting of July the 13th, members were presented with an entirely one-sided argument that was forcibly put against BLA 04. Having listened to this, members were minded to change the preferred option for Blakeney. Having watched the meeting back, anyone would have. BLA 04 is simply the better option, and we ask that, having heard a more balanced case for the preferred site, that members are able to recognise BLA 04 as the correct and most efficient choice for the village and reinstate their officer's recommendation in accordance with the parish council recommendation, who represent all the residents, not just the residents of Kingsway. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schofield. I think that very neatly completes the speakers on a 30-minute slot, which I think is what we're allowed under our terms of reference. If I can therefore move on agenda item 10 to the Planning Policy Manager, Mr. Mark Ashwell, to guide us through the report in the agenda at this point. Over to you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you, yes.
Okay, I'm just going to attempt to share a screen. Can you confirm when the map becomes available?
Yes, I see a map
with my cursor.
Yes, Blakeney site viewpoints, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So the consideration of this item, it's got Blakeney and Munsley in the same report, starting on page 165 of your agenda pack. What I'm going to do is I'm going to separate those two villages out and focus on Blakeney and deal with that first. And I assume we'll go to a vote on Blakeney, and then I'll do a separate presentation, although it's in the same report, on the Munsley proposals. There's also some general content in that report about Holt and a general update on progress on sites. I'm going to take that as presented. I'm not going to actually sort of read through it. I'm just going to leave that there so you can ask questions if you want to. So for Blakeney, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by looking at a map and try and explain the various site options that have been referred to. And then I'll run through some photographs of the various options, picking up some of the points that have been raised, and then I'll make the recommendation at the end. So on the screen in front of you now, you've got a map of Blakeney. Hope you can all see that. Marks 3 sites on this map. I'll give them their names. So this site here is the site at Kingsway. That's Blakeney 04. This site here is referred to as the Oddfellows site. That's Blakeney 01. And some people have referenced this larger parcel of land here, which is Blakeney 09, also in the Oddfellows ownership. So points of reference on this plan, which I'll refer to as I go through. This junction here of the Langham Road and the Bridleway footway, which crosses over, is a key point of reference. It acts as a sort of gateway into the village. It's where many people appreciate the views that have been referred to. So the views of the coast and the views of the church become apparent at this point where the Bridleway crosses the road. Existing development, known as Avocet View, is in this parcel of land here. The building's not actually shown on this Ordnance Survey base map. It's obviously an older map, but that area in there is now developed for residential purposes. It's worth noting that the extent of this development, Blakeney 04, does extend further up the Langham Road than the existing Avocet View development on the opposite side. And that's a key reference point. This corner here, where I'm now indicating, very conveniently has a telegraph pole broadly in its location, which is visible on a number of the photographs I'm going to show you shortly, and that'll give you a point of reference as to where that particular corner of the development proposal is. And then Blakeney Church, which has been referred to, is this building here, and you can see the relationship between this viewpoint and the church and how in this area may impact on that vista. And I'm going to show some photographs of that. Reference has also been made to some earlier appraisals when we prepared the last local plan for the district, and reference to this Blakeney 01 site and how it was apparently favoured previously by the council. It's worth clarifying that when the old local plan was prepared, the Blakeney 01 site was substantially smaller than is now shown on this plan. So the Blakeney 01 site that was appraised historically related to this lower part of the site in here, extending this boundary line across the field to pick up this corner, and it related to this lower part of the site, which is significantly lower in the landscape, and was based on the presumption that access would be provided to Morstan Road. And as we now know, vehicular access out onto Morstan Road is not available. So different areas now being appraised, a much larger site, not only including this land in here, but also including part of Blakeney 09 in order to form residential access out onto Langham Road. A materially different scheme and will have different impacts on the landscape compared to proposals which were appraised previously when the last local plan was produced. So that's the general context of the two proposals. I'm now just going to run through some photographs. I'll explain where these are taken from. So this is broadly in the location where that bridleway crosses the Langham Road, looking towards the existing Avocet View development. And you can see from this development where the skyline is and where the sea is. There's an area of sea that is visible through there. There's an area of marshes which is visible through there. But you'll note the ridge lines of these properties. Proposal is to extend that development into this area in here and to bring an access road across the frontage of these properties along this boundary and out onto the Langham Road. We are in our appraisal placing particular importance on sea views and how this development may impact on those views. This is basically turning around 180 degrees and looking the other direction. So from the same point where the bridleway crosses the Langham Road, looking towards site Blakeney 01, sorry, Blakeney 04, mustn't get mixed up, Blakeney 04. Important thing about this photograph is to see the church view. The extent of the development, I refer to that telegraph pole. That telegraph pole is just about there where we're indicating now, and the extent of the development is just to the right of that. So no doubt that you will see the church development on this site in the same view. They do relate to each other, but there is also no doubt in my mind that development of this site will not obstruct the view of the church. The church will not disappear behind development. Is on elevated ground and will remain a prominent landscape feature. The next set of photographs are sort of broadly similar. So this is another picture of Avocet View development. Site that's under consideration is in here. See on this photograph, the property called Bliss. This is Bliss, and you can see the gradually rising ground as you run up towards the hill. And the development area would encompass much of this green space here on that part of the site. The access down onto the Morstan Road, the vehicular access, is at this point here. So that is the extent of development that is proposed. That access point runs down the side of Bliss over there. This is a similar photograph looking in the other direction, back again towards the church. Blakeney 04 is in here. That second telegraph pole that I keep on referring to is in there. Development would extend that far to the right, leaving this property visible. Again, it would be in the foreground in front of the church, but certainly below the level of the church. Similar views of the two contrasting proposals. This is Blakeney 01 in here and in here. This is 04, this field here. And again, 04 looking towards the church on the right-hand side over here. So I think it's fair to say, and I've been quoted as saying this at the last meeting, both of these proposals have adverse landscape impacts. We can't from that. There's a sensitivity of the landscape all around Blakeney. We are with making a choice from two, both of which will have a landscape impact. And we've put in our appraisal process particular value on sea views because we think they are typical views of Blakeney. They're one of the defining features of the settlement. That's not to say that views of the church are unimportant, but nearly every village in North Norfolk will have a view of a church. Only a handful will have views of the sea. So we think the sea views are a particular defining feature of Blakeney that should have some sort of priority in the assessment. This last photograph shows the position of the access from Langham Road. So these buildings on the right-hand side are Avocet View. What is being proposed is an access road that runs up this boundary and then turns sharp right into the application site, which from this view would be largely hidden by these existing buildings. So that's the end of the presentation. So the officer's recommendation remains as previously. We're still of the view that in terms of overall landscape impact, this proposal, the Oddfellows Field proposal, will have more significant impacts than those in this field here. It's worth remarking a lot's made about landscaping around the proposals. Both promoters are actually offering landscaping along the northern boundaries of their proposals. It's been characterised as, you know, one development not offering that, offering lots of landscaping. There are landscape proposals associated with both schemes, which in time, and it will take a long time, will mitigate the impacts of either development. So I'm going to stop there and take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Could you? That's fine. Thank you. That's better. We can now see everyone on the call. Can I just ask you to give a brief summary of the process of the local plan proceeding to its next stage, and that there is an opportunity for further consultation before the local plan is adopted? If I could ask you just to confirm that to everyone in the meeting today, if you would, please.
Okay. So the last round of public consultation that we did was called the Regulation 18 consultation. And it's actually an options consultation. So although we published details of our preferred sites, we also published details of all of the discounted options and asked for comments on them at that stage. So actually, there has been consultation in relation to the Oddfellows proposal and our preferred option. at regulation 18 stage. But of course, people focus their firepower, if you like, their comments on the preferred sites, because those are the ones which the council was promoting at regulation 18 stage. When you've made a decision this time, you are essentially selecting your final choice of sites, and they are the sites that tend to submit for examination and defend through the examination process when the inspector looks at the plan. Before we get to that point, your choices, our choices, will be put out to a further round of public consultation, what's called Regulation 19. All other options will be discounted at that stage, so it won't be an options consultation, it will just be a consultation on the proposals. People will be invited to make comments and will be able to say whatever they want to say about our proposals in our plan. The big difference between the next round of consultation and the one we've just done is any comments received are considered by the inspector. They're not considered by North Norfolk District Council. At that point, we adopt the position of defending our proposals and justifying our proposals in front of the inspector. And it will be for the inspector to decide whether he thinks our proposals are acceptable or not. Those who are making representations against our proposals have got a right to be heard at the examination. So they can appear at the inquiry and they can try and persuade the inspector to a different view. That is part of the process. So there is one more significant opportunity for those parties, whichever side of the debate we land on, who are disgruntled by the decision, to sort of have their day in court and try and persuade the inspector that we've reached the wrong decision. So one more round of public consultation.
Thank you, Mark, for clarifying matters in that regard. That's extremely helpful. So I would like to, at this point, just throw the meeting open to our members to raise any questions or comments at this point.
Chairman, before you do that, can I just say that the local members' comments haven't been read out yet? I just don't want to forget Councillor Ward's opportunity to have her views shared with the committee. You can either do it now or at the end of the debate, but it's just so we don't forget that.
I have, sorry, Chair. I have those comments. I can read them verbatim if you like. Probably best before the debate takes place, so that other members are aware of what the local members' views are. I'm going to just have to open a file, but I'll read them directly to you. So, as the local member for Blakeney, I've been lobbied extensively over the two allocation options, Blakeney 01 and Blakeney 04. I've no financial or other interest in either site. As you know, Blakeney Parish Council have now clearly expressed a preference for Blakeney 04. I want to put on record for the committee that the overriding consideration for the majority of residents who have contacted me is the provision of local homes for local people, particularly homes for social rent. Residents will support the site which guarantees the most social housing, particularly if it can be secured for local letting rather than general letting. It is my understanding that Blakeney 04 is preferred by Blakeney Parish Council as the landowner is offering significant social housing provision. Local housing providers are already working with the Parish Council to secure local lettings options. I've not been provided with information on Blakeney 01's social housing provision. I want to encourage the working party to select the site which has demonstrated commitment to social housing. Both sites are problematic from a landscape perspective, and I don't consider landscape issues to be a critical issue at this stage. And that's obviously from Karen Ward.
Thank you, Mark, for reading that to us. I think in the report, the sites are fairly similar, aren't they, in their allocation for affordable housing at 35%. So we're talking really of distinguishing on tenure types or the mix of rental properties within the two options. Am I correct on that?
Not quite. No. So the preparation of the local plan is concerned with the allocation of land, the principle of allocating land, numbers of dwelling, controlling things like layout and so on, and the provision of affordable housing. What the allocation specifies is a specific percentage of affordable homes, and I use affordable homes in the generic sense to capture a range of different tenure types. The precise mix of those houses, and in particular the occupation of those houses, will be mainly a matter for the housing enabling team to deal with. What we don't specify through the planning process is who's going to live in these properties and whether they'll be subject to local lettings or general lettings restrictions. We say deliver affordable housing. Let me just retract that statement I just made. What we do specify, on allocated sites is that affordable housing should be delivered for general lettings, not local lettings. So what we're saying here is whichever site is developed, and they're both offering the same thing, they should deliver 35% affordable housing. That 35% affordable housing should be provided in a tenure mix, which is determined by policy, but the occupation of those units, who will actually get priority, will be determined through the general lettings policy rather than the local lettings policy.
Okay.
So I think it'd be fair to say, in terms of affordable housing provision, you should be treating both sites equally. One doesn't stand out above the other. Nobody's offering you 45% affordable housing and the other 25%. They are both offering broadly similar quantities and mixes of affordable homes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. So if I may start the debate, as it were, with moving to Councillor Nigel Dixon and then to Councillor Fitch-Tillett. Over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Should I just point out, I wasn't present at the meeting which caused, if you like, this matter to be reviewed back in, I think it was July. However, I believe the grounds for that, given that the representations were made, were correct. So in terms of process, I think that we have followed the right process. In the intervening time, there has been a lot of time available for each of the promoters of the sites to make their cases very clear to us. And we've had, over the passage of time, a lot of material presented to us. So I feel that I'm not in possession of the merits of each of the sites, but in the end, a decision needs to be made. And Mr. Chairman, on the basis of what I've heard so far, and I think we've heard an awful lot so far, a decision needs to be made, and I am satisfied that the officer's recommendation is that which I will be lending my support to. So I won't say any more than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Fitch-Tillett, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. As I am always concerned about incursions of into the area of outstanding natural beauty, I can take some comfort if we can ensure that the design is of a local vernacular. Now, whether we do this at this stage or if and when planning applications come through, but I do want to stress that we really do not need concrete block flat type development. I can just about live with some nice brick and flint and pan tiles, but also I have great concerns about light pollution. So again, I'm presuming that we will do this on application, but if we can do it now, please can we? Thank you.
I don't believe that we can do the design aspect of it at this stage. Obviously, there is the North Norfolk Design Guide, which I think would be very strictly applied, particularly to this part of our district being close to the coast. I'm not sure whether Mr. Ashwell wants to just respond at this point to clarify that on my behalf.
I would discourage to control the precise design of dwelling at this stage. You don't know what's going to be proposed. You've seen some illustrations from one of the two parties, not from the other. I think it's a matter that you should leave till such time as a planning application is made. When you've got proper drawings in front of you, you can judge the impact. And I wouldn't go so far as to say you need to predetermine whether these are vernacular buildings or not. You may have a particular view, but I think you should form that view when you've got specific proposals in front of you to look at. We're not dealing with that at this stage.
Thank you. Councillor Heinrich, I think you're next in line.
Councillor Toy and Councillor Gay are ahead of me, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Toy, would you like to come in?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just had some questions around livability, really, with the footpaths. I noticed on the map that we were shown earlier, and the lady from the parish council said about the footpath that can run across to the school. I also know that coming down Langham Road, I believe you can access into the sports field as well, so you don't actually have to walk down the road. Certainly that feels a better road, whereas the other roads, along the coast there, a lot of that doesn't have footpath. So I guess my question really is that the footpath shown on the map that goes through to the school, is there any plans to do anything with that? I don't remember seeing anything in all the papers that we had. Because that to me is key. If we're going to expect people that are hopefully going to have children to live there, to have the vibrant community, that path must be well maintained rather than being a muddy footpath, which would discourage people at the wrong time of year of then jumping in their cars or taking alternative routes that may not be suitable. So I don't know if anybody can answer that for me. Just to let me know about the sort of walking accessibility issues for both sides. Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to sort of take that at a sort of broader level to start with, and then look at that specific footpath issue. So in my mind, Blakeney is not a large place. We are being offered here prospects of development on two separate parcels of land, which are very closely related to each other. We're not in a scenario where we've got one parcel of land on the edge of the village and another parcel of land a mile down the road, and clearly you can distinguish between the two. They are both edge of settlement locations, and if you are of a mind to, you could walk to the key facilities in the villages from both sites. If you were not of a mind to, and it was a rainy day, you get your car out and you would drive. And I think trying to separate the two sites out on the premise of proximity to day-to-day services, which are really the shop, the school, the village hall, on the basis that one site is marginally closer than another, I think is a difficult case to make. I wouldn't want to put too much weight on that. On the specific issue of the footpath connection to the school, there's a footpath connection which runs along the back of the Kingsway development and crosses the fields and goes out onto the Saxlingham Road, providing convenient access to the primary school. And from the site frontage, both developments, because they obviously access almost at the same point on Langham Road, would enjoy convenient pedestrian access down the Langham Road to the doctor's surgery, the village hall and the shop beyond. I think it would be unappealing to walk along the Morstan Road because of the lack of footways at the moment. I don't think that would be a particularly desirable route to walk along. but there is the prospect of providing a little link into the adjacent cul-de-sac, which would provide good access into village facilities. But the key point to me is that separating the two sites and distinguishing one from the other on the basis of how far it is to walk to and how convenient it is to walk to the limited facilities which are available, I think is difficult, given, you know, we're talking about a couple of hundred yards at most difference between the two proposals. The footpath could be upgraded on the Blakeney 04 site. It's within the site boundary, and if you wanted to see that footpath improved and surfaced, that would be something you could specify at this stage. But you'd only be able to do that in relation to the first stretch of it along parallel with the site itself. The link would then extend further into open countryside and across another field. So you could get it partially surfaced, but not entirely surfaced.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Toy. Councillor Gay, sorry to have taken you out of turn. There you go. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. I don't have any questions. I have carefully read all of the papers which were sent to me, but I do have a couple of observations. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Ashwell for the very careful exposition of the views which we've received. But the second is this. I did form the impression at the last meeting that, and I was there, that Blakeney Parish Council had no preference in this matter. But as we've heard from Mrs. Thew today, it's quite clear that the Parish Council does have a view in this matter. And I just wanted to say that will weigh with me in casting my vote. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Gay. On my list, I've got Councillor Heinrich. Sorry, I'll come back to you, Councillor Heinrich.
That's okay. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, following on from what Councillor Gay has said, I've listened to all the arguments. It's clearly very fine balance between the two sites. However, I have to take note of the Parish Council view. They are people who do know the village and will presumably have talks to the residents. I also have to take account of Officer Ashwell's very cogent arguments in favour of 04. And though I'm still considering my position, I'm tending towards following the officer recommendation on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heinrich. Are there any other contributions or questions? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. Yes, I have listened to this with great interest, because it appears quite definitely that whatever choice is made is going to have some form of detrimental conduct and on the environment and the surrounding area. I fully applaud the inclusion of low-cost housing in both presentations. I'd like to know, if we can, Mr. Chairman, if that is going to remain constant, because I think the figures are not only applicable, I think they're very important when you consider the local population. I then come down to the situation of infrastructure to each site, because of the grey area of harm that's going to happen. So whichever site is going to happen is going to have this effect, and it's coming down to the costs, the infrastructure, and then the other associated changes that are going to go with any recluded and selected applications. So I believe I've made my choice, listening to the debate today, and obviously I thank the author of the report. I also thank the public, because they've spoken today with great knowledge and great stipulation on their preferred choices. It's the most difficult choice that this working party has to make. But I would just like to say, you know, I'd like to ask, are these main question is ratio of low cost housing, are they going to stay there? Are they completely definite? Thank you.
If I could ask you, Mr. Ashwell, just to comment on that aspect of it.
So we're in a slightly unusual position in relation to sort of allocating land, that both parties at this stage have submitted viability assessments. So you wouldn't normally expect to see detailed viability assessments until you're dealing with a planning application. Now, caveats should be attached to that. Both of them are testing the viability of notional schemes. You know, they've not made planning applications, they haven't worked through their proposals, they've submitted illustrations of what might happen on the site. We're not being asked to determine on the basis of the documents that have been circulated that you've seen. So there's a caveat attached to the sort of viability work that it is based on some assumptions rather than just a specific proposal. That said, they both conclude that they are able, I'm using the word able to deliver 35% affordable housing in a viable way. I don't think, and I think it'd be fair to say, I think both assessments have taken a reasonable view in relation to costs of development, land values and so on. You know, the Oddfellows proposal has not excluded the cost of the road. The road is in their assessment. They've taken a view on land value, they've taken a view on construction costs. Now, neither of those viability assessments that have been submitted have been out for external validation or scrutiny. You know, they've been submitted and taken on face value, largely by me. I've read them. I don't see anything that stands out in those documents which would lead me to conclude at this stage that we'd struggle to get 35% affordable housing on either of these two sites. That's largely because the housing market in Blakeney is so buoyant and the sales values are so high that I'm surprised if you couldn't get 35% affordable housing. So, yeah. Again, they're both on an equal footing. You know, you can compare the two. They're both offering to, and both have got a reasonable prospect of providing 35% affordable homes.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Councillor Grove-Jones.
Sorry, I can't raise my little blue hand, but it won't let me.
No, I did receive it. Just
Oh,
so that you know. Yes, I did. Thank you.
Oh, right. Well, I found this very interesting, this second debate. Very reasoned arguments put forward for both sides. It is, I think, finely balanced. One does offer, they both offer 30 presumed houses, 35% affordables. One site takes in a larger amount of open green field than the other. And as Councillor Gay and Councillor Heinrich have said, when we first appraised this presentation back in July, I wasn't sure that the parish council had a view. So therefore, having over this particular time spoken to various people, I found this very difficult, but I am minded to go with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grove-Jones. I just want now to invite the Head of Planning, Mr. Philip Rowson, as the final contributor, and then I propose to move to the vote. Thank you. Officer Rowson, do you want to come in at this stage?
Thank you, Chairman. Just for members' benefit, ultimately, the intention on affordable housing that you have in front of you today is on the balance of probabilities. This is not a planning application. There is no section 106 tied to it. So from that point of view, all I can tell you, members, is that that matter would have to be resolved through the development management process. You can only take today as an expression of intent from the promoters of both of these sites. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rowson. So I think that probably winds up the debate on this particular item on the agenda. I'm conscious that time is pressing. We're now at 11:15. So I propose to move to a recorded or roll call vote. If I can hand over to you, Emma, to start the process, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, I'll call out your names alphabetically, and if you could just indicate whether you're voting for, against or abstaining. So starting with Councillor Brown.
Just a minute, Emma. Can you just clarify what we're voting for? Are we voting in
Agenda item? It's agenda item 10, which is, let me just get the recommendation up. That's correct, I think.
I think, Andrew, you need to just come in here and specify, are we first of all voting for the officer's recommendation?
Yes, yes, thank you, Councillor Gore-Jones. Yes, what I'm proposing to do is to vote on the part of item 10, which relates to Blakeney, to accept the officer's recommendation of site BL 04, and then we will deal with the presentation for Munsley and take a vote on the Munsley item in the agenda separately. Is that clear to everyone at this point? So I apologise. I should have made that clear before I handed over to Emma, and I'm sorry for that, Emma, to complicate things unintentionally.
Right, so we will go alphabetically, and you're voting on the officer's recommendation for Blakeney BLA 04. So starting with Councillor Brown, please.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Dixon.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Gay.
For.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
For.
Councillor Fredericks.
For.
Councillor Grove-Jones.
For.
Councillor Heinrich.
For.
Councillor Pearce.
For.
Councillor Punchard.
For.
Councillor Toy.
For.
And that is unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Emma, for that, and thank you for everybody participating in that important item on the agenda. I'm conscious that we're probably about right to proceed, I think, to the Munsley item, which again will be over to Mr. Ashwell to outline his report on this. I don't think we have anybody speaking to this particular item.
Just confirm that picture is available on your screen again now, Chair.
Yes, it is. It is. Thank you.
Up of Munsley. Okay. So again, this is an item that the Working Party have previously considered, site selection in Munsley. The area in red shown on the screen was the area which the officers identified as their preferred choice, having considered a range of other alternatives shown in grey. You recall there was quite a lot of objection to this through the last round of consultation. And at your meeting, you deferred a decision expressly to allow for further discussions with Munsley Parish Council, who had been promoting alternative ideas. So Munsley Parish Council were seeking a view on developing this alternative site MUN 11. And at one stage, we're arguing that if development could be accommodated on that site, there would be less need for development on the officers' preferred allocation, which was being earmarked for around about 50 dwellings. So the item was deferred. We've had a parish council meeting. You'll see the background to that in the papers and correspondence with the parish council. The parish council are now independently pursuing the development of MUN 11, which is a site which is within the development boundary of Munsley, although it's designated as public open space. And the parish council have been advised that if they want to promote essentially an affordable housing scheme on MUN 11, they can do so through the normal planning process. They can make a planning application and they can ask the development committee to take the view that the delivery of affordable housing is more important than retention of the open space and make that case. They've also had advice from the housing enabling team around potentially bringing MUN 11 through the community land trust route, which fit for the parish council of them being able to retain control over local occupancy. In response to the representations that were received, and in part respond to the parish council's concerns that the number of dwellings on MUN 03 should be reduced from 50 to 30. That will provide quite a generous site in terms of total site area and allow for a number of layouts to be accommodated. Importantly, to take account of the setting of the church on the opposite side of the coast road and avoid development on the higher part of the site, which is evident in the local landscape. We're not specifying development area here and telling people where the 35 dwellings should go, but the site is large enough to accommodate an appropriate form of development. And on that basis, the parish council have confirmed that they don't have an objection, recommending MUN 03, but with a reduced number of dwellings from 50 down to 35. And that's me finished, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Can I invite questions or comments from members?
Wendy.
Councillor Fredericks.
I've got
Sorry, I can't see you because I think we've got some graphics in the way obstructing us. I think.
Mark, you're still sharing your screen.
Am I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Desktop.
Desktop, yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Fredericks.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. I'm looking at MU 03, and I'm really pleased that we've lowered the housing element on there from 50 to 30. That's been fantastic, and thank you for liaising with Munsley Parish Council. I'm really appreciative that they had a full consultation on this time, so thank you very much for that. The only remaining concern I have is that the proposed development does not overshadow that row of Victorian terraces, because the land is so high and on a steep hill. That's I know we can't say where we're going to put the houses, but I would like a preference for away from those Victorian terraces. They are worried about drainage. They are worried about overlooking and overshadowing, and I think that is an extremely likely proposition. So if you look at your map of MU 03, you'll see that there is enough room for development without overshadowing those Victorian terraces. They were for the railway workers and for the railway management built at that time. So I'd like a little bit of clarification on that. Are you considering MU 04 as well, or is that now taken off the table? It's locally known as the alpaca field because we used to have alpacas on there, but I'd like those two things clarified if possible. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the proposal is to retain the entirety of the red area which is shown on the plan. No other areas, just the red area which is on the plan. Similar to the comments made last time about, we're not dealing with a planning application here. We do not know where the houses are going to be on the site. I think it is large enough to accommodate a variety of different layouts. I think if you wanted some wording, in the policy that said, a form of layout which protects the amenity, the occupiers of the terraced properties, that's a standard planning requirement anyway. But if you wanted a little bit more sort of beef behind that, some wording in the policy that flags that as an issue would be a reasonable thing to do at this stage. We could add that into the policy requirements. Now, obviously, how that layout impacts on that terrace and what form of development takes place is still an issue for the development committee when a planning application is submitted. But they would at least have a hook in the policy which flags that issue as being important. I hope that would sort of satisfy that concern.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Mark.
So I'd be happy to modify the recommendation on that basis, subject to the addition of some wording about protecting the amenity of adjacent occupiers.
Yeah, I really think that is incredibly important, that we do not overshadow, we do not have an effect on those places that have been there for over 150 years. I just don't feel that would be fair thing to do. And that was one of the main objections from the people that I've spoken to that actually live in those houses. So yes, if we can beef that up, I'm not going to say ramp it up because that's an expression that's been used an awful lot lately. But if we could beef that up and put some weight behind that, that would be fantastic. I'd be very happy to propose that if that wording was in there and if we could maintain the integrity of that area, of that field. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fredericks. Any other questions or comments before we move to proposing, seconding, and then taking the vote? Any comments? No. Well, am I satisfied, or am I to accept you as the proposer, Councillor Fredericks?
Yeah, I'm a substitute, so I don't know if I can or not, but yeah, I'll propose.
Yes, you can. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're quite okay. So if I accept you as the proposer, I'm quite happy to second that, and in so doing, confirm that we would like a slight amendment to take into account the concern that we've just discussed, and that we, in taking the vote, delegate the wording of that additional amendment, should I say, to the recommendation to Mark Ashwell as the policy planning manager on that. I think if we do that, that will cover it. So if I can move to you, Emma, to take over and handle the vote.
Yes, of course, Chairman. As before, we will do it alphabetically, and this is voting for the Munsley site selection. So,
yeah,
Munsley MUN 03A, land off Cromer Road and Church Lane. So, if you could each indicate whether you're voting for, against, or abstaining. And starting again with Councillor Brown, please.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Dixon.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Gay.
For.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
For.
Councillor Fredericks.
For.
Councillor Grove-Jones.
For.
Councillor Heinrich.
For.
Councillor Pearce.
For.
Councillor Punchard.
For.
And Councillor Toy.
For.
And that is unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you, Emma. Right, we're at 11:30. I would suggest perhaps a 10-minute break at this stage. Would that be acceptable to all concerned? And then we can move to item 7 on the agenda, which will be the first of the assessments that have been prepared to support the planning policy. And then we'll go through the agenda in the same order as printed, obviously excluding item 10 that we've just dealt with, if that's okay.
If I can just remind members to turn your camera and video off, because the live stream will continue. Otherwise, I have to start essentially as though it was a new meeting. So,
yeah. Okay, thank you, Emma.
identified. Hi, David. Yeah, not too bad. Yeah. Yeah, so I thought I would brush it before we spoke. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Take my fingers off the photograph will help. Yeah. We'll swap hands actually. That's probably better. Yeah. 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 I look like a KGB hitman in that in that photograph. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, everyone, welcome back. I think we've got everybody back on the call. Just before we go to item 7,
Andrew, we're missing Angie and Nigel. Oh, there. They've got
I'm
Angie
back.
now. Just Nigel Dixon.
Can I just check with you, Mark, before we proceed to the next item that you're not directly involved with? Is there anything that you would like to say about the appeal at Beresford Road? There's a section, I think, sort of appended to item 10.
Yes, okay, yeah, so... Yeah.
I didn't want to miss it if you wanted to update us on it.
Just do a very quick update if you like. So the report did include fleeting reference to both Holt and, well, it didn't actually make any reference to Cromer. So we've still got sites work to do in Cromer, where you deferred Clifton Park, and at Holt, where we've sort of delayed making a decision pending the appeal decision on the Gladman proposal. Obviously, the public inquiry has been held on Gladman now. We're still awaiting a decision. We get no indication from the inspector when they're likely to make a decision. We'd hope it might be before Christmas. But that would largely determine our approach to site allocations in Holt, and obviously we'll report that back to you in the new year. Similarly, at Cromer, we're really awaiting the decision that's pending on the Gurney planning application on the Norwich Road and access arrangements there, which are still up for discussion, but we'll have to revisit the Clifton Park decision at some point early in the new year. We can resolve Holt and Cromer, that will then complete the work on sites. So that's a big tranche of the plan out of the way, and we can then just focus on the remaining sort of policy areas, which are getting smaller and smaller. If you clear the agenda today, which is a big ask, there's a lot of stuff on there in environmental policies. You've probably got 2, maybe 3 meetings at most to finalise the content of the plan, and then we'll get on to the serious task of actually sort of drafting it. So we're really beginning to make some serious progress now. Obviously, the big remaining issues largely sit around site allocations at North Walsham, and we'll see how we progress today on that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that update. Right, so to go back to the agenda item 7, this is a landscape character and also a landscape sensitivity assessment process to agree supplementary planning guidance, which will enable our team to progress with framing policy for the local plan moving forward. So very important part of the process. And if I can hand over to Officer Ian Withington. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, and thank you very much. Before I just get onto item 7, I just got a very brief introduction to say. Today, I'm going to be presenting you 3 papers, each bring to a conclusion a number of work streams, 2 of which underpin the emerging local plan, and a culmination of a significant amount of officer time and efforts over the years. But I would like to stress right from the start that some of these are fairly complicated areas of planning policy. They are integrated areas of work, which is why they flow after each other in this presentation. But that work could not have been undertaken without the involvement of colleagues who are also on this meeting today. There's Keris and Kathy from our landscape team. James and Caroline from the policy team have also added significantly to the environmental policies. But I should also add that the work has spanned new and old officers over the years. And those of you who have served on working parties will remember Martha and Sarah before they left on to bigger and better things. And they've also contributed in their ways to this process. In the case of the second report, the RAMS, this is a culmination of work that started with visitor surveys back in 2016. Was reported to members in March 2017, led to the Commission of Place Services to build on those surveys. They've identified zones of influence. They've devised a suitable mitigation passage that satisfies natural England, and also all of the separate Norfolk authorities. So even before we undertook the work through a cross-party steering group, there was considerable debate on the scope of such work across Norfolk authorities. And given the diversions of opinions and approaches at the time, it took a significant involvement of Carys and myself to ensure the work remained focused and was advanced at a timescale that would gel with our local plan production. And I hope that this work is recognised, as without it, it's clear to me that sufficient progress would not have been made to bring it before you today. Now, having said that, I know there's an awful lot on the agenda, so I am going to be unaccustomedly brief as I can. You'll be pleased to hear. And I will start with agenda item 7, which is the landscape character assessment, landscape sensitivity assessment. The report starts on page 9 of your pack, and substantive items are in that report. Now, these documents are the documents that provide the backbone of the evidence required to underpin the Council's approach to landscape considerations, and are not just important in substantiating the specific landscape policies such as ENV1 and 2, which are the designated landscape and landscape character, but through the identification of character areas and types and their associated valued features, allow other policies to draw on landscape evidence to substantiate their purpose. For example, amenity, pollution, biodiversity, and lighting issues, which a couple of you have touched on already today. The substantive documents were detailed to this working party in October 2018, where a report was presented along with a detailed presentation at the time. Now, I've put links back to those reports and the presentation for those of you who wish to refresh yourselves, and all those members who may not have been part of the working party at the time. Those links are in the document, so if you've wanted to look at them, you could have. These documents, though, update the current LCA and provide further analysis around the sensitivity of renewable energy projects with regard to landscape features, and are considered to reflect up-to-date best practice. Now, at the 2018 meeting, the documents were accepted as part of the evidence base for plan making, and in order to attribute more weight in decision making and integrate further into the local plan policies, it was requested that they go out to public consultation and the appropriate regulations in order for them to become supplementary planning documents. So we've done that. We did that alongside the local plan consultation last year. The feedback from that consultation in general was very positive and supportive, with the recognition of the approach in identifying the inherent values and key features in landscape across North Norfolk, and their role in assisting the Council in its duty to protect and enhance the defined character was generally very supportive. Updates to the documents since that consultation have in fact been quite minor. They've been around various additional references, mapping detail to enable greater cohesion between the NNDC area and the Broad. And we've taken all that into account. It's contained in the report in Appendix 1, which is pages 15 to 31. And you'll see in the end column, each item is summarized of how it has been taken into account. We are now recommending the final documents be adopted as supplementary planning guidance, to inform plan making, and that the process of the authority is provided, and in that process, authority is given to the head of planning to follow the remaining statutory processes, which includes the withdrawal of the existing 2008 landscape character assessment and the issuing of the correct notices in order to replace the statutory documents on our website and publish them in a timely manner. I'll stop there on this item, but I'm happy to take questions, and I've also got Kathy Batchelor, our landscape officer, here as well, and she can assist if need be.
Thank you, Ian. I don't have any questions. Are there any questions or comments from the floor? If not, I propose to recommend this and move to a vote on it. I've got. Are you wanted to come in, Councillor Fitch-Tillett, at this point?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman. Huge tribute to Kathy for an enormous piece of work on this. It's absolutely first class. Obviously, as Vice Chair of the Norfolk Coast Partnership, I welcome that this has now been formalised, and I'm more than happy to propose that we recommend it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Anyone else at this point? I would echo your comments. It's an extremely good piece of work, and I think we can have every confidence in this supporting the plan making process moving forward. So if I can propose this recommendation, which you have before you, to revoke the existing 2009 assessment, I think it was, and to promote this as a supplementary planning document.
Chair, can I just interrupt? I think you'll find that Councillor Fitch-Tillett has proposed, and are you seconding approval?
I'm quite happy to second and give way to Councillor Fitch-Tillett. I was going to propose and ask Councillor Fitch-Tillett to second, but I'm quite happy to allow Councillor Fitch-Tillett to propose, and I will second the recommendation. And finally, the recommendation is to refer the policy wording to the head of planning, I think it is. Yes, head of planning. So can I ask for all those in favour to raise their hands on this occasion? And thank you. Have we got that? Is that unanimous, Emma?
Yes, it is, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So if we can move to item 8, Ian.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes. Item 8 starts on page 33 of your report pack. It is the Recreation Avoidance Mitigation Strategy, or RAMS is its acronym. Now, I know a number of you have had a lot to read and take in over the past 2 weeks, especially of those who are on Development Committee. But I'm afraid I make no apology for this report. It was rather long, but I felt it was essential that the report cover the context and provide you with a brief framework and significant areas that we are proposing. I'll spare you the detail. I'm not going to go through it with you again today, as I know you have read it thoroughly. But those of you who have a keen ear will also, and were also on Development Committee last week, will be aware that this area came up as part of the Fakenham application, and its incorporation into the proposal at the time allowed the council to pass a significant milestone in granting the permission of 950 dwellings. The issue of habitat regulations and the council's legal duty also came up with another application on the date stiff key, and the proposal was rightly refused on HRA grounds. If it had been accepted, there could have been implications around the council's failure to carry out its statutory duties under the HRA regulations. Essentially, to put it bluntly, all plans and programs are subject to habitat regulation assessments. These assessments are undertaken to ensure that the plans, policies and proposals will not result in any significant adverse impacts on internationally recognised wildlife sites. And where the potential for such impact arises, there is an agreed process of mitigation. Such assessments are part of a legal duty placed upon the council. Now, our interim habitat regulation assessment of the local plan indicated that the proposed housing growth, in combination with that planned across the county, will increase the number of recreational visitors to many of the important wildlife sites in the district. If left, if left unmitigated, this has the potential to have significant adverse impacts resulting from recreational disturbance. As such, suitable mitigation measures must be incorporated into the local plan to ensure the plan meets the legal requirements of the habitat regulations. We are not alone in this. The latest and most up-to-date evidence shows that the growth levels and the identified zones of influence cover the entire region, and all Norfolk authorities are in the same boat. Secondly, the impacts are cumulative growth. They are not derived from each individual site. It is in the in-combination effects. This is why we commenced this work collectively through the Norfolk Strategic Framework, and given its importance, why Keris and I have been at the forefront and proactively involved from the beginning in this item across Norfolk. Indeed, other authorities have already gone down this route outside of Norfolk, such as Essex, Suffolk, and on the south coast already have similar strategies or similar mitigation has had to be put in place at a plan level in order to satisfy this legal requirement. In order to ensure the local plan and planning policy proposals can reach a conclusion of no adverse effect on the integrity of European sites, it's proposed to adopt, in conjunction with the other local planning authorities across Norfolk, what we are calling a green infrastructure and recreation avoidance strategy. I sometimes refer to RAMS, I sometimes refer to it as to GI stroke RAMS. I don't mean to confuse you, but the approach basically is a combination of two approaches. It's a combination of a tariff-based approach and that of the provision of what is being called enhanced green infrastructure on sites of 50 units plus. This is green infrastructure of sufficient scale and standards to divert daily recreational habits away from European sites, such as on-site green infrastructure at a scale suitable for dog walking. The tariff itself will deliver a specific costed package of measures identified within the study, and they include the use of a team of on-site rangers, funding for specific GI projects, improved signage, education, and monitoring. And if it had been in place probably this summer, it probably would have paid off some dividends, given the increased traffic we've had on the coast, which is of course one of the European sites in North Norfolk. Collectively, this whole study has been done through a steering group, through the Norfolk Strategic Framework. It's been worked up with Natural England. The final adoption is still subject to final stages of checks and review through the Norfolk Strategic Framework, which is scheduled for January 2021, so next month. What I'm seeking today is the in-principle endorsement of the proposed policy approaches, which are outlined in Appendix 2 of the report, starting on page 67, essentially so that this can go into our final HRA, which is scheduled to has to be scheduled in order to take the policies and fit into the timescales of the advancement. And secondly, given the Natural England advice letter, which again is contained in the report back at 47, once the mitigation package has been finalised, I'm seeking the authority to collect the tariff ahead of the local plan adoption. In other words, put in place the strategy ahead of the local plan. And the reasons I want to do that is if we don't, there could be implications. One of them, the tariff is actually based on the costed growth minus commitments already. So any site that comes forward ahead of this would change the number of units within the calculation, and therefore it will only go up. And we'd have to keep reviewing it and keep reviewing it. The amount of mitigation identified as being required may not be deliverable if we don't collect the revenue. And secondly or thirdly, however you want to look at it, as should proposals come forward ahead of a plan, it actually may not be possible for them to demonstrate no adverse effect, no adverse impacts. And technically, permission should be refused. And Natural England have already advised this in their letter. And this is seeking to put forward, now that we have a mitigation package, put forward that into our procedures. Now, Appendix 3 to the report details the new policy specifically for RAMs. I can bring that up on the screen if members wish me to. Otherwise, it is in page 67 of your pack. Essentially, it's suggesting a new policy is added to the local plan, and it is looking at linking in with the biodiversity policy, and it essentially says in order to avoid or mitigate potential adverse impacts on habitat sites and recreational pressures, all residential and tourism related developments are required to contribute towards mitigation measures identified in the RAMS study through a tariff-based dwelling contribution, and proposals of 50 dwelling plus are required to provide on-site enhanced green infrastructure or contribute to green infrastructure as identified within the study. The next stages of this work is through a project group being set up which would coordinate that fund. That's basically the summary of it, and Keris and I would be happy to take questions on this if you have any.
Thank you, Ian. Are there any questions or any? I don't have any personally, but are there any questions or comments? I think it's good that we adopt option one. I think it is on the tariff, isn't it? Prudent housekeeping. It means we can start immediately. I think, does it not?
It's once the strategy is adopted by the Norfolk Strategic Framework, in other words, signed off by Natural England in its complexity and on its final state, then I'm saying we would put in the measures to start that through the council. Yeah, good, excellent. Councillor Sorry, Councillor Brown. Chair. I should say also that the actual agreement is in the due to cooperate in the Norfolk Strategic Framework. It would be remiss of me, and Mark will probably tell me off if I don't say so, that it will come back through the duty to cooperate when Mark brings that report, and full actual agreement and the study would come back as well. Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you for that. Councillor Fitch-Tillett and then Councillor Gay.
Yeah, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for that, Ian, and a huge thank you to Keris for this. It's a huge piece of work. It's something that we have identified quite some time back in the Welsh and North Norfolk Marine Partnership, and particularly this year, as Ian has mentioned, visitor disturbance has been absolutely astronomical. I can mention to the fact that a lot of the breeding birds at Hokum didn't breed this year because there were too many people letting their dogs run loose along the sands there. We all know about the issues of horsey seals, how the roads get gridlocked around there. It's something I've been nagging Mark about for quite some time, and I'm really delighted that it's come forward now. Councillor Brown, are you and I going to have an argument about who proposes this time? Because I am quite happy to propose this one as well. And I'm also glad I've just highlighted again the duty to cooperate. This is absolutely superb piece of work, right the way across the county, with all the wildlife stunts, with the area of that outstanding natural beauty. And of course, to a certain extent, some of the marine conservation zones where they come closer into the coast. Super piece of work. The only thing is, how do we get our visitors to behave? But that's for another day.
Thank you, Councillor Fitch-Tillett. Now, I will be delighted if you want to propose this recommendation, and I will be more than happy to second it. Councillor Gay and then Councillor Heinrich.
Thank you. I do support option 1, definitely, but I'm just a little bit confused about how this plays out on the ground, how it works. How the tariffs are, what happens once the tariffs are collected and how they are used. And I wondered if anyone could cast any more light on that. I'm presuming that the tariffs have to be used where the infraction has occurred. Is that correct?
It's proposed that a tariff is collected, which is, from memory, £205 and a certain amount of pennies per dwelling. That goes into a collective fund. And what is proposed is that a steering group is set up across the district in order to control those funds. So as part of a strategy is the employment of rangers, and they will look at signage and a whole load of other items. But how that money then comes back down to employ those people is through that project group. That actual project group is not set up yet, but we will have to demonstrate that that is set up by the time our examination comes for the local plan, in order to say that the mitigation that is required is in place. It's proposed that we would collect it on 2 ways, either through Section 106 agreements or what's called a Section 111 agreement, which is an upfront payment to the council at validation stage. That's currently done by King's Lynn already, because they have a similar scheme up and running, but they would shift those funds into this bigger scheme when it is set up and running. Similarly, Great Yarmouth have this scheme set up as well, and again they would then look at joining the bigger group for the whole package of measures across the district. Does that help? Does that answer?
No,
Virginia.
Yes, that helps a little. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think the point that Ian's making is we're not asking you to sign off on the future administration of this fund. We're asking you to sign up to the principle of collecting tariff payments. How it will actually be administered and who gets the money is going to be for later decision. The example in King's Lynn is they collect modest tariffs. I think it's £50 per dwelling. They have a member officer panel that receives bids. It's a competitive process. People make bids to the fund. There are funding criteria, and it's largely overseen at the moment by the OMB partnership on behalf of Kings Lynn District Council. Because it's being rolled out at a county level and the funding could become quite significant, there will be a need to establish a similar body for distributing the monies. It might well be that some of the monies will fund a professional resource to assist with that. Keris is waving out around that, so let Keris come in.
Hello. Yes. Just to provide a bit further information on the proposals. The report suggests looking at having some roving wardens, which will then be able to, once the monies come in and they are allocated, so to a particular European site, according to where the development is within a zone of influence, and that's all recorded at the planning stage of the development. So once that the impact is there, i.e. the houses are occupied, the money will be then highlighted to allocate those wardens to those particular sites to then implement this process of combating the visitor issues through, like say, signage, through direct communication, to try and get people to behave in an appropriate manner on these sites. And that's the way that it's seen as sort of best practice and is being carried out at other places within the country. So there is. This will be a sort of essentially Norfolk based delivery partnership, which will then be able to allocate the resources as and when they're needed, depending on when the development and the impact is envisaged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Keris.
Yeah, and thank you, Councillor Gay, for your question. Very good question. Councillor Heinrich, I believe that you wanted to comment.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I really welcome these proposals. They are very much needed. And only other comment would be that I'm pleased to see reference to bringing Backton Wood and Anson's Wood and so on into a country park. That's going to be critical as we look towards the western development of North Walsham, that we have some ability to manage those recreation areas better than they currently are able to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that probably covers item 8. So I'm proposing to move to a vote. The proposal is as for the recommendation stated in section 7, if I can abbreviate in that manner, on page 44 of your agenda. And I will second Councillor Fitztillitt's proposal. And if we can move Emma to a vote by show of hands, please. All those in favour?
It's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Emma. Thank you. Thank you, members. So we move neatly on to agenda item 9. And I'm assuming it's Ian yet again. Over to you,
I'm
Ian.
afraid so, yes. I do have support, though, for your numerous questions, I'm sure.
Right, okay.
Right, this is essentially a suite of policies and covering the environmental aspects of the local plan. So it starts on page 71 of your report packs. And what we are seeking today is a final endorsement of a range of policies covering the Council's statutory duty to designated landscapes towards conservation and enhancement, the overall approach to the consideration of landscape through the use of identified valued characteristics and features, the protection of biodiversity and geology, and policies are updated with references to net biodiversity gain or enhancement, which is coming to the fore of national policy now. We also update our green infrastructure and public right-of-way approaches, protection towards trees, hedgerows and woodlands, and overarching design principles, as well as the protection of amenity. So the whole suite of policies here, and I've missed off conservation and enhancement of the built heritage. That policy is in that package 2. Again, I don't plan to speak very long on this. As outlined in, I've got section 2.1 to 2.11 of the report. There's a background of these policies and their purposes, and the final suite of policies starts on page 137 of your pack. And I think the report itself covers the consultation feedback, how we've amended those policies and why we're amending those policies. And what's in that appendix is similar to previous sessions where we've highlighted the changes on page 137 onwards in those policies. Now, these policies have had various lead officers, so I can do this in 2 ways, and I'll be guided by yourselves. I can just take questions from members in order of the policies, and I can direct these to the relevant officer as need be, or I can take members through the suite of policies one by one and take questions on each policy as we go. I'll be guided by you, Chair, on this. I can share my screen with bring the policies up, which possibly is a way to do it, or I can just go through them in one go.
My preference would be to go through them in one go, Ian, but unless I think the feeling is probably yes amongst members if we go through them in one go, if you don't mind.
In that case, I will share my screen so you know what we're looking at. I will go through them in one go, and when I get to policies which have been written by colleagues, I shall ask them to talk you through that, and then we'll take the questions at the end, if that's okay. Yep. Just bear with me while I share my screen. Right, if you can tell me if you're seeing.
Yes, yep, we can see
my
that.
screen now. Yep. Well, the first one we have is ENV1. This is on page 137 of your paper copies.
Can you make it slightly bigger, Ian, please?
Yeah, hold on. Oh, yeah, I can do that.
Some of us can't see it terribly well.
That's 125%. How's that?
That's fine, thank you.
Does that work?
Yeah, yep, that works.
Right. I might not need my glasses myself. I'll have to sit back. I'll just go straight to the policy effectively. This is one of my policy, which I've worked with Kathy over. The first 2 policies, in fact, are ENV1, ENV2. This one looks at the designated areas of landscape, so it's the AONB and it's the Broads effectively. National policy gives the highest degree of protection to designated landscapes, and national policy essentially is telling us that proposals should contribute positively and conserve and enhance these valued landscapes and their settings through the appropriate siting, scale, massing and materials. So you've already had that discussion of how you apply such a policy within Blakeney earlier this morning. I won't comment any further. But the policy itself, should other proposals come forward, is the guiding statutory local plan policy of how you would deal with conflicts within that designated landscape. So essentially, it is telling us, or officers and decision makers, that major development, which is actually not the universal major development as defined in national policy, normally of 10 or more, it is major development is defined in this case on a case-by-case basis, in line with criteria set out in the MPPF, and is made by the decision maker. So proposals for major development will be refused. It starts off by saying, unless exceptional circumstances exist and the development is in the public interest. And in order to demonstrate that, we are setting out a range of criteria. So you've got to respect the scenic quality and maintain an area's distinctive sense of place, reinforce its local distinctiveness. And as we are now adopting our landscape character guidance as supplementary planning document, we are giving that document greater prevalence in the decision-making process. So the way that document works is identifying the key characteristics of a landscape character and area, and therefore any proposal has to have reference to the defined characteristics and its valued features. It also, in line with national policy, seeks to conserve and enhance those, and it's looking to minimize the negative impacts on it, and the scale of which is sustainable, it's directed at appropriate location, and it's relevant to the economic, social and well-being of the area. And that's a change of what was there before. It specifically said need before in the Regulation 18 version, but this is encompassed in that, but it's not just residential need, it's looking at the other areas of need as well. And that aligns with one of our community policies, our SD, I can't remember what it is, 2 or 3, where we are supportive of community-led development within communities where it is in support of need. So it's a deliberate move, but it aligns with another policy. And therefore, the last bullet there, we've got in line with the objectives of the statutory management plan. So that's in line with those objectives set out in the A1B management plan, of which is still in development. And then we've added at the bottom of this a visual impact assessment undertaken in accordance with best practice, should there be the potential for adverse impacts. So we're asking the applicant here to demonstrate to us and set out how they're going to overcome this. So in front of the decision maker, we have everything and we can present that to you at Development Committee. We think this is a far stronger policy than it was there at Regulation 18. We think it's a much more concise approach aligning to now national policy. The Regulation 18 was very, very similar to the core strategy policy, but this is just updated now to reflect the MPPF. I'll move on to ENV2, which is for wider protection and enhancement of local landscape and settlement character. So outside the
Ian, sorry, Ian, can I just interrupt?
Yes.
Sorry, everybody, but just going back to ENV1, this is also trying to reflect our, as the local planning authority, we have a statutory duty under the Rights of Way and Countryside Act to protect and enhance the designated landscape which we manage. So it's really just trying to refine those duties and set them out very clearly. It's also emphasised, as Ian has mentioned in the NPPF, that in consideration of planning applications, we have to give great weight, and there's not many other places in the NPPF where it talks about great weight to be given in the planning balance to the impact on the area of outstanding natural beauty. So that really has been emphasised in recent versions of the NPPF. And that's just really just to say how that has been reflected in this new policy proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. Do you want to just summarise the next policy, Ian, for us?
Yeah, very quickly. This is the wider landscape character assessment, ENV2. So it looks at the entire district and tells us how the landscape character should be considered in planning applications. So again, it's the overarching approach, if you like. So protection and enhancement of landscape and settlement character. Again, it's aligned to the landscape character assessment, landscape sensitivity assessments, in that it, the key characteristics and valued features, their objectives and guidelines as identified within that study. So we're highlighting you've got to take it, you know, take the evidence, which is based on best practice, and use it again to define in your applications of why your proposal is suitable in landscape terms. Key to the characteristics again are the valued features, the distinctive settlement character. So these are the key sort of criteria that are coming out. You must show, they should demonstrate that the proposal is suitable for its location, scale, design and materials. So in a sense, that's covering what was discussed at Blakeney as well in terms of local vernacular and selection of materials aligned with the design. Characteristics such as the settlement character, the quality of the distinctive landscapes, visual sensitivity of skylines, etc. And nocturnal character, which I'm sure Kathy will comment on in a little bit. This is in because it reflects not only wildlife, but also some of the valued features and some of the landscape character types. The nocturnal character is a valued feature, so therefore you need to reflect that in your design and your location. There's a change from Regulation 18 in the fact that the defined setting of Sheringham Park has been removed and Historic Parks and Gardens has been renamed as Registered Parks and Gardens. Historic England commented that they would prefer to see the registered parks and gardens as the setting and views into those parks and gardens, rather than a visual limiting such a review to such as a setting of Sheringham Park, which is a visual setting. So the views into and out of and the settings of registered parks and gardens is a broader consideration than just a setting of the park. So we've taken that out. And you will also see that gaps criteria 2 has been changed, gaps between settlements and the landscape settings. That's taken out. That's taken out mainly because the landscape character themselves and the valued features where those gaps are important are already identified within the landscape character assessment as a valued features. And there are a number of those. Top of my head, I think it was 6 or 7 within the study out of 16. So it's already in there. It's not a dilution of the policy. Gaps would be looked at in accordance with the character area. And again, we've added where there's a adverse impact, the proposals would have to give us the evidence of a visual impact assessment and provide that judgment for us to comment upon. The next one is
Ian. Can I just?
Yep. Sorry. Go on.
Can I just raise a point? I think members have probably gone through, particularly these policy draft policy submissions that you're referring to. If you could summarise them in their totality. Rather than going through line by line, could I encourage you to do that? The reason I say this is because we've got the site allocation for North Walsham to come, and I'm just conscious of time. That's all. That's the only reason why I ask.
Yes, I think in that case I'll go back to the report where they are actually summarised. That was the end of my two policies, I should say. The rest have been done by colleagues.
Okay. So that was a mistimed intervention on my part.
Yes, but I can summarise them all. I think the biodiversity and geodiversity is essentially reflecting the need to consider biodiversity. We've altered the policy in a way that it reflects a sort of international, national and local designation. So we have incorporated the requirement for the RAMs in there. ENV5 and ENV7 is the green infrastructure and public rights of way. We've merged, we had two policies before, which was GI and public rights of way. We feel we don't need two policies, we've merged them. And as part of that, we've also added the RAMS category within the policy to ensure that 50 dwellings plus are in there. Trees and hedgerows, I think we have enlarged that policy to make sure it covers not just trees, but hedgerows, but the natural environment, protection of trees that are there already, and also highlighted that they are important for climate change reasons as well. And high quality design, I think will probably be more of a discussion on this one. It's very much a high level policy that signposts to the design guide. It still remains that it must conform to our design guide. The design guide, as you know, is being developed by our conservation and landscape design team. They will advance that and pick up a lot of the issues that need to be done and reflected, but the policy points towards that design guide still. And the amenity policy itself is picking up a lot of other issues around glazing, skylights, artificial light, and those that impact on the amenity. And then the last one, heritage. This one's been amended and refined in very close consultation with Historic England. We've liaised very strongly with them on the heritage impact assessment, which we've done for the sites, and also subsequently ensured that the actual policy on the environment, historic environment, has is accords with their expectation. And I'm sure James will say more on that. And I think that's very quickly it. I think if we open it up to questions, I will direct people to the relevant officer depending on what they are, but perhaps we take them in policies in order.
Yep, thank you. I've got a hand raised from Councillor Virginia Gay.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to speak when this draws to a close, so I'm happy to wait for officers to speak more now.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from members at this point of either of Ian or his colleagues? I think it's a very thorough piece of work, and I think you are all to be congratulated for presenting this to us and advancing the local plan process with the diligent work that you've done to date.
That's very much appreciated.
No, it really is appreciated, Ian. I think the team, in the circumstances that we've all been subjected to for obvious reasons this year, I think you've worked extremely well under the circumstances. Any comments from members at this particular point? Yes, Councillor Gay.
Yes, if you're moving to a discussion now,
Yes.
Chairman, then
Yes.
there are some things I'd like to say. First of all, I really do welcome these policies. I think a lot of the wording is sharper than what we had in the core strategy. I'd like to say I welcome the inclusion of the attention given to geology, which I think in our consultations we were specifically asked to do. And in addition, all kinds of extra added pieces of attention. I mean, I remember 10 years ago, these discussions about green infrastructure, I think they were called corridors then, something like that. And there was a sort of view that councillors who were interested in that must be a little bit on the crazy side. So it's, you know, it's really nice to see this enshrined here. I particularly welcome the wording to comply with the design guide. This is so much better than having regard to, or if possible, consider. You know, those kinds of wording. And the historic environment, I think, is especially strong, and I'm really glad to see that. I can actually think of buildings that planning committees might have been able to save if we had this wording and the attention to non-designated assets, which are often really important to the fabric of our towns or villages. They may not be grade 2 listed or grade 1 listed, but they're extremely important to our well-being, to our sense of identity. So I'm just hoping you'll allow me the chance to propose these when the time comes, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gay. Councillor Heinrich?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd echo everything that Councillor Gay has said. This is a superb piece of work, and thanks to all the officers concerned, particularly from the point of view of what we are dealing with shortly. Happy with ENV9 in terms of high quality design. The content of that policy will be critical to the development of the development brief for the North Horsham Western Extension, and I think this ought to be seen by the public as setting the standards that we will expect, and that they can be confident that we will get that right. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Heinrich. Any other questions or comments before we move to Councillor Grove-Jones?
Just a minute, still can't get my blooming, I'll just take that off. My blue hand. No, I'm just going to, I always say one shouldn't do this in committees, it's daft, but I absolutely endorse everything everybody's said. Fantastic piece of work, Ian, and the various people who have submitted and altered. Very difficult to cover everything. I mean, the environment, my God, green infrastructure, etc. I mean, you must have, it's a wonder any of you have got any hair left. Anyway, Virginia, sorry.
I was going to say we've worked very collaboratively across the disciplines here to ensure that the policies flow on from each other and connect back to our objectives. So one of the themes of this plan is improved GI, improved connectivity, the natural environment, and therefore we're wording these so that we can put the proper emphasis on them. And that's I'm pleased that you've noticed that. But it really is a very good team effort for this.
Excellent. Now you're proposing, Virginia, are you, for acceptance of this one? I'll second that if you like. That's perfectly okay. Excellent work as always.
Well, I think we can move to a vote. So we have Councillor Virginia Gay proposing the recommendation at 13.1 on page 84. For those of you who wish to look at it whilst we go through this. And if Councillor Grove-Jones is prepared to second it, can I move to a vote, Emma, please? Are you prepared?
Yes, I'm ready, Chairman. I'm just waiting for a show of hands. Yep.
Yep. If we can all raise our hands in favour.
Yes, that's unanimous, Chairman.
That's unanimous. Thank you very much, and very appropriate that it is unanimous to show our support and appreciation to the team for the work that you've done. Excellent.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Yep, excellent stuff. Can I move smartly? It's 20 to 1. Can I move smartly to agenda item 11? This is the site allocation for the North Walsham Western Extension.
Andrew, are we going to have a 10-minute break again at some point? Because this is going to take a little time, isn't it? It's not going to be a quickie, I can tell you that much, because I know certain people wish to talk. I mean,
Yes.
we can take a break now or take a break at 1. What do people feel? 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Andrew, what do you think?
I think probably 15 minutes. Can we agree on that? Is that acceptable to everyone?
Now or later?
I'd like to hear the speaker, Mr. Hester, I think has registered to speak.
Oh, right. Oh, I'm sorry. I hadn't realised we got people in the
yeah,
waiting room.
and the presentation. And then when we've had the presentation, perhaps we can take a break at that point and come back to raise our questions. Does that seem like an acceptable plan to everyone?
No, Angie's got her face on again, but that seems okay.
It was just a thought that will the presentation be fresh in our memories if we've gone off and made a coffee? But if, you know, I'll go with the majority. I'm quite happy.
Well, I'm just, it's entirely up to members, isn't it, what we do here? The head of planning has raised his blue hand. Can I bring you in, Philip?
Chairman, just to support your proposal, it's not unusual for members to break between presentation and speakers. I'm sure that a short break will enable members to be refreshed and also to have that information still fresh within their minds, together with any notes that they may make on that presentation. So I would just echo support for your suggestion, Chairman.
Thank you, Philip. Yes, I think if we take the speaker and the presentation at this stage, which hopefully will take us approximately to 1 p.m, and then if we can have a 15-minute break or even longer if people desire, because I appreciate we are at lunchtime more or less at this stage, so people might want 30 minutes. If you can be thinking of that when we get to the end of the presentation, I'll work with whatever members require, really. So if Mr. Hester is in the waiting room, Emma?
Yes, I am.
Yes, he's there, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hester, you've got 3 minutes. We will set the clock running, I'm afraid. So you go ahead and address the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. All right, North Walsham now finds itself in an unfortunate situation. The town have been prepared and excited to embrace the prospect of growth that could lead to regeneration of the town and a well-designed, genuinely sustainable urban extension. To this end, the Town Council and Regenerate North Walsham CIC have collaborated and conducted a process of discussions locally to get people on side and to register their various aspirations for growth, in anticipation that as a group we could play a role in positively feeding into the plan-making process on the town's behalf. We have tried to set up productive discussions with North Norfolk District Council on this, including a meeting with officers. However, I found very little traction. What this committee has been presented with for decision at this meeting is a fait accompli of the policy wording for the major housing allocation, and one that does not reflect an adequate policy basis, let alone an adequate policy that can meet the aspirations for North Walsham as the next major growth point within the district. It doesn't acknowledge the work we have done to bring national expertise and potentially funding to secure the best outcomes for North Walsham. We have in fact applied for a £500,000 grant to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government to fund consultant-led studies that will inform and underpin the District Council's policies and plans. We expect to hear early in the new year about this application. Technically, it doesn't answer big questions around how the infrastructure we know will be required to enable the scheme and how income and the economic ambitions for the town will be delivered. Nor does it convey our desire for the new urban extension to be a garden suburb in the modern sense, which would become a fully fledged mixed-use walkable neighbourhood, not another cheapskate vast housing estate generating even more commuting to Norwich and seizing up the town's road network. It does not address the key issues of viability and deliverability if a development of any quality is actually going to be constructed. We had hoped that the lessons of previous development allocations might have been taken on board. This is why we as a collaboration have looked to consultants with experience of delivering mixed-use sustainable developments elsewhere to support us. We know that we need a scheme that is viable as well as aspirational, and it was our hope that we might work with the District Council to test new ways to achieve both. That positive dialogue which could have been established to move towards an allocation that fully supports our intentions has not materialised. In its current form, we cannot support the District Council's approach and request that item 11 be withdrawn for reconsideration at a future meeting early in the new year, allowing time for a productive dialogue to be established between the district and the collaborators, and for the technical matters highlighted to be resolved, and specifically a viable plan for the delivery of the full Western Link route, which is key for this size of development in our town. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll mute myself. Thank you, Councillor Hester, for that. I'm sure that we will take your comments on board when we reach the debate stage. If I can hand over to Officer Stuart Harrison, I presume that you're going to present this item to us. Stuart, thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll obviously try and keep this as concise as I possibly can, but obviously giving it the time and attention that it deserves. I'll take you through the site assessment work that has been completed for North Walsham, and at the end, after the break, Mark and I will take any questions, sum up and present the recommendations. But today I'd like to focus on the identification of suitable, available and deliverable sites for allocation in North Walsham. Mr. Chairman, you'll be pleased to hear that I'm not going to go through the site assessment methodology in any detail. Members have considered this previously, and you can find it summarised in section 3 of the report. Also, the full methodology can be found at Appendix 1 at page 179 of the report pack. There's also a great deal of information in the draft site assessment booklet, which you would have seen previously for the other settlements that have come before you. And again, this can be found at Appendix 2 on page 185. Again, I'm not going to go through this in any detail, but you'll see in this booklet, there's a great deal of information on the settlement level information. There's a summary of the feedback from the Regulation 18 consultation. There's a review of the issues and constraints, and it gives you an updated sustainability appraisal for North Walsham. Okay, moving on specifically on the site detail for North Walsham. The summary of the site assessment conclusions can be found at section 6 of the report on page 176, where we state North Walsham does not have the significant environmental and landscape constraints that are found elsewhere in the district. For example, like we've heard today in Blakeney. It's not in the AONB, it's not close to the Broads or in proximity to any international designated sites. Of course, the town is generally surrounded by countryside, and I don't want to diminish the local importance of the countryside around North Walsham. And although we are proposing a significant amount of growth in North Walsham, the preferred allocations aim to limit the impact on the more sensitive landscape locations around the town. There are some options for brownfield development within the town. However, these opportunities are relatively modest and limited, and they will not address the identified need for homes in North Walsham. Therefore, new greenfield site allocations are necessary to deliver the required growth. If I bring up a map now, Mr. Chairman, you'll see all of the sites considered in North Walsham. Hopefully you will see that plan in front of you.
Yes, that's clear, Stuart. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So what you can see there is that there were over 50 sites that have been assessed in North Walsham. This was a task that I undertook originally for Regulation 18 and subsequently for this stage. You can see that most of the sites were predominantly greenfield sites, which were located around the edge of the town. Pretty much every greenfield site around the edge of the town was put forward for consideration for allocation. Some of these sites were discounted for reasons including impact the development could have on the landscape and the countryside. Some sites may have had adverse highway junction and network impacts. Some of the sites were not well connected to key services in the town centre by walking, cycling or public transport. Of these 50 sites that we considered, 2 sites were going to be put forward for mixed use allocation as preferred options for North Walsham, and these will allow an allocation of approximately 2,150 new dwellings. Another site has been identified for allocation as employment land, providing 2 hectares of land adjacent to the industrial estate. This employment land allocation will also provide the land for the potential Western Link Road into the industrial estate and onto the wider highway network. Just move on to the preferred sites now. These 3 sites are considered to be the most suitable sites available in North Walsham and subject to detailed policy requirements, including the production of the development brief for the Western Extension. These sites are considered to be the most appropriate locations to meet the housing and employment land requirement for the town. Each are well located to the services within the town centre, the existing employment land, and to the local schools, both the existing and proposed school. They are reasonably well contained in the landscape and will deliver the strategic infrastructure required. If I take members briefly through the preferred option sites, firstly, we have NW01B, which is this site down here, which is land at Norwich Road and Nursery Drive. This site is suggested to have an allocation of up to 350 dwellings, 2 hectares of employment land, and will improve connectivity between the previously developed residential sites. It will also have 3.5 hectares of public open space. Part of this site was previously allocated with both the northern Hopkin Home site and the southern Persimmon site now being complete. This allocation will deliver further homes on the site, a significant area of public open space, as I said, and it will provide a much needed road and pedestrian connection between the previously developed options. The existing businesses will be retained and the allocation will strengthen the future viability of these businesses. Moving on to NW52, which we can see at the north here. This is the proposed employment land. It's named land east of Bradfield Road and provide approximately 2.4 hectares of employment land at the industrial estate. And as I said, importantly, provide the highway connection through from Cornish Way onto Bradfield Road and into the Western Extension. The detailed policy wording for both of these sites can be found on 258 and 260 of the report pack. As an example here, here's the policy wording for the land at Norwich Road and the nursery site. And here's the proposed wording for the land east of Bradfield Road, the employment site. Okay, moving on to the final site, the large Western Extension, which is NW62/A. This large site proposes a sustainable urban extension to the west of the town and will provide approximately 1,800 new homes, 7 hectares of employment land, and a site for a new primary school. The Western Extension will deliver a new Western Link Road, which will mitigate the impact of development traffic and provide improved transport network conditions in the town. It will deliver significant amounts of public open space and new green infrastructure. The site that you see before you today has been slightly amended from that site you saw at Regulation 18. A small area of land has been included within the allocation to the north of the railway line. Now, this addition ensures that the land either side of the railway forms part of the allocation and will be available for any highway improvements that are required into the industrial estate. An extra parcel of land has been included along the southern boundary. This additional land will allow for increased green infrastructure and also allow for improved options as far as the junction arrangement on the Norwich Road goes for the Western Link Road and any other potential highway improvements that may be required. But I think the potential for an improved and enhanced environmental buffer to the south, I think, is quite important, particularly given the battlefield site to the south and the heathland, etc., that we have to the south of the town. I'll just bring up the draft policy wording for the western extension. You will notice here that the policy wording on the screen has slightly changed from the policy wording in the report. We've had feedback, obviously, from the Town Council and from Councillor Heinrich. So therefore, I think it was important to amend the policy wording to try and strengthen that element up. So this revised policy wording states that the development brief should provide a strategy for the early delivery of the Western Link Road, including the northern spur over the railway line into the industrial estate. So that highlighted section on the screen has included that strengthening of the line regarding the industrial estate. Now, members will see that a lot of these policy requirements refer to what should be contained within the development brief. It's not an exclusive list. The development brief will consider all of these and more factors, and I'll touch on what work is ongoing there shortly. Another element of the policy wording that I've changed is to have within that policy wording explicit reference to engagement and consultation. We have produced a draft consultation document. However, I think we need to strengthen this and include much more detail on how and when we engage with key stakeholders, such as the Town Council and other local groups. I'll just provide you with a very brief update on the development brief progress. As you are aware, it's been produced in partnership with the Landowner Consortium. However, I think it's important to stress that it's ultimately driven by this council and produced by officers of this council. We are working on the content of the development brief, and we are hoping to have a continued constructive dialogue with the Town Council and other key stakeholders in the new year, and they will help us shape the future of this document. Local members are also being kept informed and briefed on key developments in relation to the production of the development brief. And as well as this ongoing engagement, we are looking to undertake public consultation on the draft development brief in the spring. And local members and the working party will have the opportunity to consider that draft brief before we go out to public consultation. That about concludes the site assessment element of the report. I just want to touch on finally the last matter for settlement-wide designations in North Walsham, which is the open space designations in the town. On screen now, you can see those proposed open space sites. Now, again, I'm not going to go through this in any detail because the open space and amenity green space report has already been considered by working party, and there are no proposed changes for North Walsham from what members agreed previously. For completeness sake, we asked the working party to agree these proposed open space designations, which is reflected in the recommendations. Now, before we break, I'll just show members that we have had a look at the recommendation in the report, and we've added an extra recommendation line in there just to make sure that we are clear that we will include the requirement to provide that connection into the industrial estate and some further strengthening of the requirement to provide more detailed consultation and engagement. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stuart, for covering that comprehensively and being so concise as well. I think It's now 1 o'clock, members, so I think this is a convenient point at which to take a break. What is the feeling? Would people like 30 minutes or would they like less? I'm not aware of commitments that members may have going into the afternoon.
Personally, I would prefer 15 minutes because I want to get on with this. You know, we had an extremely long meeting on Thursday, those of us who were in that. We had another meeting on Friday, and I do think that 15 minutes, enough for a sandwich. I'm sorry, Angie, enough for me to feed the birds, and then we get back and get on with it.
I tend to agree.
Yeah, I think that's settled. So let's reconvene at 1:15. If we can all switch our microphones and video links off so that we're not recorded during the break. Thank you very much, members. See you soon.
It's Eric Seward, Andrew. Have you got me logged to say something?
Yeah, I've put a reply in the chat to you, Eric, to say that I'll bring you in first.
All right.
When we resume on the debate.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Just to remind everyone that I think we are currently being live streamed. Just so that everyone is aware.
Andrew, I was a little confused. The gentleman who spoke before Stuart, is he the representing the town council?
Yes, well, he's a town councillor.
Yeah, but is he representing the town council's view?
Yes, he's representing the town council's view, as far as I'm aware. I think that's correct, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, I can confirm that Councillor Barry Hester is a member of the North Walsham Town Council and part of their development group looking at the Western Extension.
Yeah. Just making sure everyone is back. Right, it's Nigel. Just waiting for Angie. Virginia's here. Yep. I think the only person that's not rejoined is Angie at the moment.
I should start.
I think we'll have to start, won't we? Because we're at 17 minutes past now. Right. Thank you very much for coming back so promptly, everyone. So if we move to the questions and queries stage, and we open the debate on the North Walsham extension site allocation, if I can bring in Councillor Seward as the first person to register an interest. Over to you, Councillor Seward.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, members. I speak both as a North Norfolk District Councillor in North Walsham and also as a County Council member for the town. This today seems to be a long time coming. Seems to me I've been at this for a very long time, including a number of bus trips around the town looking at the various sites. I agree entirely with the officer's assessments on the site allocations. If we are to have extra housing in North Walsham, and we're obliged to do so, I think, because we've got to meet government imposed housing targets, there's very little option the district has other than to have a major development in the town. I would just echo what the officers have said about Norwich Road and Nursery Drive. That was in the last local plan. It's never led to any housing development. I think that just provides a stark reminder. You can approve things for allocation. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get any houses built. Now, but I'm going to therefore confine my comments to NW62 and the Western Extension. This is a major development for the town, and it is important that within the policy we get the supporting infrastructure in its widest terms correct. I particularly welcome the improved definition to say what the link road is, and that actually extends from the Cromer Road Long Link Road over the railway line towards the industrial estate. The WSP report on the highway study that you have, I believe, with your papers, did actually spend some time looking at the viability of extending the Western Link Road into the industrial estate. We do have a railway bridge there that can take 40-ton lorries. The County Council thought that it might need a new bridge in order to provide proper access for cyclists, pedestrians, and not show any delays for lorries, rather than a single lane bridge with traffic lights. Can I just say, this is North Walsham. This isn't Felixstowe or the Port of Dover. A one-lane bridge is perfectly adequate. Lorries and cyclists won't go over the bridge together. One will follow the other. And if that could also include mobile scooters, if we need anything at all, it is just simply an attachment to the bridge or in some form of pedestrian crossing just for pedestrians, a bit like they have over railway stations up and down the country. So I think we need to do a bit more work on that. Now, in terms of the actual public funding, I do take the view and consistently argued it that in order to get this right, there will have to be an element of public funding. I have had correspondence recently with the head of service at the County Council to say, do you recognise this? And that will you be using your sources to attract this? I have to say, there was no reference in the reply that came to me to say they recognise this. At the very most, it's something that's distant in the horizon. That approach is just not good enough. In terms of the recommendations, as I say, I do agree with the revised definitions in terms of the link road. I do think, and this is a matter for members, whether we need to strengthen the policy in terms of getting this link road built. It has to be at the beginning of the development. And I'm not sure that we're actually there yet, although what is being said has been improved. We cannot have this road being developed piecemeal as developers build in this area. And the second thing is the question of the development brief, which is going to have to be there for a lot of the detail in relation to layout, environmentally sensitive approaches, buildings that are environmentally sustainable. That is the crucial part of the detail. In the papers that came to us, and I'm looking at page 260 here, it says the development brief will be developed in partnership between the landowners, promoters and the council and will be subject to public consultation. I noticed that that's been amended to consultation and engagement study, and I welcome that. But can I just say this in relation to the town council, because we seem to have lost our way a bit there in recent months in terms of discussions with them. They are a pivotal body in the town. They are not just another public consultee. And if you're going to get ownership for this, just as you need the support of local district and county members, you need the support of the town council. It cannot be that they're talked to and then another meeting takes place in smoke-filled rooms and they're not there. They have to be treated on a par with the district council, the county council and council planning officers. Now, I don't know if what's now proposed and the further discussions that are to take place bring that into line, but can I just say that as a cabinet member at the district council, to agree any recommendations that are made, I will want firm assurances that the town council is treated on a par with everyone else. So I do make that plea very strongly to members and to you, Chairman, that that is embraced in there. The other thing that's absolutely crucial with this, there can be no fudging about what's in this policy statement. If we're to have good, sustainable development, then it has to be embraced in that policy statement and development brief. It can't be some obiter dicta set out in context by the way, because otherwise developers will get round it. So I've made my pleas to you, Chairman, and to members. That is what I wish to say to you, and I look forward to listening to what you've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seward. Thank you very much. Appreciate your contribution. Would you like to respond to the points made there, Stuart, at this stage?
I think it's probably worth waiting to hear from all the members. And
From all the members
pick up
together. Yeah, that's fine. I know there was a substantial number of points raised by Councillor Seward, so I just thought I'd give you the opportunity at this stage. But I think
I can pick up on one particular point, and that's the issue around the transport evidence study. Not all members of the working party have seen that yet, but the local members have. And that's a very high level study that we've had the initial findings of. And one of the delaying factors as far as the work on the development brief has always been the production of that transport evidence study. So we were waiting for that production. It was very much delayed by COVID and a number of other factors, but we received that a few weeks ago. We're already thinking about the next steps as far as that evidence goes. So we're already having conversations with the county about funding more detailed work as far as the connection from the railway bridge into the industrial estate. So yes, certainly we are thinking about that. It's at the forefront of our minds. And part of the discussions we're having and the ongoing conversations with the county and others will be around funding. Obviously, we need to understand how much the infrastructure may cost. But I know it's something that ourselves, county and the landowners want to have a discussion and a conversation around how this infrastructure is funded going forward. But on the other matters, I think when we've heard from all members, Mark will join me and we can address all of the issues together.
Yep, fine. That's that. Thank you very much. That's fine. Councillor Heinrich, I think you're next in line.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Members will not be surprised to hear that I agree entirely with what Councillor Seward has already said. However, a few more comments of my own on this. And I'd like to begin by thanking the officers for their hard work in bringing together these site allocations and the very careful assessment of not only the sites, but the difficulties inherent in expanding the town within the constraints of the historic core and the complex highway difficulties. I think what's come out of it gives me confidence, perhaps as we've seen, not totally for the town council. Yeah, it's not ideal for everybody, and there will be some people who are not happy with this. And as we've heard this morning, the town council and Regenerate North Walsham and their advisors may want to explore some alternative approaches, and I'm sure we will now be able to listen fully to those. And I'm grateful that the recommendation has been modified to ensure that the town council and associated bodies are to be fully included in all future discussions around the development brief. We have in this Western Extension to meet the aspirations of the people of North Walsham. We've got to get the design, the layout, the landscape, the environmental issues and infrastructure considerations to be agreeable to everybody, not just something developers want. Fortunately, that involves our own policies, and we have this morning adopted the environmental policies, and I think ENV9, the new ENV9, will meet many of the concerns. That does set a very strong basis on which to move forward. They're robust, and I think will ensure good quality of development. You really must hope that eventually the town feels it does have the necessary ownership of all of this. So again, emphasise the consultation. Now, if you look at the sites themselves, the Norwich Road site, yes, it's been ripe development for years. We know the long history of it. It has the potential to give us some more employment land for low impact type activities, studios, workshops, shared office space, the sort of things that can be needed for remote working and small scale business that is likely to evolve over the next 10 to 20 years. I don't think there's anything contentious about that. and the good quality development brief will resolve any outstanding issues. Just add the proviso that with the current traffic situation on Norwich Road, it simply re-emphasises the importance of having that Western Link Road to get a significant bulk of traffic off Norwich Road, and followed by some parking restrictions. NW52, yep, if we don't have employment land and businesses and industries providing local jobs, we're in danger of ending up with the Western Extension being a dormitory suburb for Norwich, and we have to do our best to avoid that. We've got to get some 21st century businesses in suitable premises on that land and as part of the mixed use land. The West Extension itself, yeah, as it's clear, it is the only viable location for expanding North Walsham and for meeting our land requirements. Anywhere else is simply not possible without causing almighty difficulties in the historic town centre. I regret the loss of the high-grade farmland and the change of the landscape, but it does have many positive factors. We can get a holistic development brief from this that will govern the form and quality of that development. At the same time, we can come up with something that will reduce the problems elsewhere in the town. We do it to a high standard, we can enhance North Walsham, not damage it. We're going to get that detail in the development brief. And again, I thank officers for taking on board what I've discussed with them over the last week or so, and that is now in those recommendations. And as officers, of course, have had sight of North Walsham Town Council's vision statement, and it is not significantly different from what we've already said ourselves in our own officers' draft vision. We are not miles apart, despite what may have been said elsewhere and today. We are remarkably close together, providing we carry on working together. The ultimate key is getting that Western Link Road to the industrial estate. It's not going to be easy. We'll have arguments over very expensive bridges that don't need to be there when a pedestrian bridge and traffic lights resolves that problem, as we've already been told. We need to ensure that there is funding, and I'm aware that the town has approached our MP, who I understand has made some representations to Mr. Jenrick's department, which have been received favourably, and we may be politically different, but I thank him for his work on that. I don't think I need to say much more because the officers have taken away some of the concerns I had. Emphasise that there's two things I really want to see out of this. One is that link road to the industrial estate. That is critical. It's the only way of improving the access for business, getting the HGVs out of roads like Station Road and Aylsham Road, which are totally unsuitable for it. And asking that we ensure that we do get a very high quality development brief before anything takes place. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Heinrich. Councillor Gay, can I move over to you?
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to say I very much appreciate the adjustments to the wording which have taken place in the recommendation today. I agree with everything that Councillor Heinrich has said, particularly about the link road. This is absolutely vital to this proposal and really thus to the whole of the local plan. I wanted to propose the preceding policies, which other people may see as having been separate. I wanted to propose the preceding policies because I've always understood that their application is essential to a well-designed scheme in North Walsham. I honestly don't think any of us here today, not anyone on this call, wants to see a vast, undistinguished housing estate. And that's what we've been working to all along, is to eliminate that possibility. I support what Councillor Heinrich has said about employment land. Of course, we need employment land, and we need employment land in the right place, as this provides for, because otherwise everybody who lives here will be working elsewhere, and that's not ideal for a number of reasons, as you all know. It again may seem minor to some of you, but I do appreciate the mention of the battlefield and the attention which Stuart drew to that. That is actually of national significance and will form a part of what happens in the town in the future. So thank you for that. My last inquiry, it is just an inquiry, and there on page 206 and 207, Historic England makes some suggestions for the policy, which I would hope would be taken into account at the final wording stage. Anyway, thank you, Chairman. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Gay. Can I, at this point, invite any other questions or comments? Councillor Grove-Jones, was that a hand raised? No.
No, I mean, I agree with what with the presentations from our North Walsham councillors. I've been discussing this with Mark Ashwell for God knows how many years. You know, I mean, at one time we really didn't think we'd get this off the ground because there were 3 different landowners, but thank goodness they formed a consortium, so that is good. But even Mark said months, years ago, at least 2-3 years ago, that roadway is absolutely vital. And at one stage, it did not extend over the A149. It stopped there. And we all went, oh my goodness, you know, how can you have this? So at least we've got that. We've got the extension, we've got the employment land, and it's a humongous amount of houses. But I think it'll stimulate and enhance North Walsham eventually, as we've said, as long as the design guide is used effectively and we get decent houses, which are not all the same as everywhere else, as the Hopkins and Persimmons, because that's the last thing we want, is another dollop of those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grove-Jones. Councillor Pearce, did you want to?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've listened most attentively to the local council members' views on this, and as a person that has only lived up here 30 years, I think it's, first of all, the most important thing, and I do agree, is to get that road built. It doesn't matter whether you have 3 developers, 6 developers, 3 landowners, whatever. You've got to get people's heads together to build that road. Nobody wants to build it. And at the end of the day, as you've so rightly said, if you have a road that doesn't go far enough, it's not going to put the through development phases that you're going to need. North Walsham desperately needs it because it has to again become that catalyst to stop people working in Norwich and living in North Walsham. That will happen as a matter of course, but you've got to entice more local people to live locally and work locally, hence this mix of employment land and housing land, and that is of vital importance to get that right. Types of housing, yes, of course, it's got to mirror the local population's needs, but the overriding factor is what Councillor Seward said. You've got to get the town council and everybody else together, and unless we do that, and it's got to be done at the base stage, probably starting with the next meeting, for it to move forward. And I just want to say, you know, I want to see it go ahead. North Walsham needs it, and may I say it, North Norfolk needs it. But it all does hinge, and I know it sounds silly, but it's paramount. It all hinges around that access road, so you can bring the whole of those areas together. And you know, that is of paramount importance. And I reiterate, from an outside member and someone who's come from outside the county a fair time ago the importance of putting link roads in before you do the major housing and employment land. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Councillor Dixon, you want to come in at this stage?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to say really that I'm comfortable with what's been presented. My only concern really relates to probably one of process and the comments of the Town Council. I have to say that what the Town Council has to say does give me cause for concern. And to some extent, the local members have, I think, assuaged some of that, but I do believe that there needs to be a concerted effort to ensure that the Town Council is fully involved in the evolution of the plans and that they have every opportunity to contribute to it. I guess with a lot of these things, it's all about striking the right compromises along the way, because there inevitably will be. But I think to agree a common purpose and to agree a common route leading to that outcome is what I would like to, I think, emphasize here today. So there's nothing that you've, as I said, the officer presentation and the material that's been put before us, nothing in that gives me any particular concern. It's how we get there and making sure that everybody is on board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Fredericks.
I am concerned, thank you, Mr. Chair. I am concerned, are the primary carers in North Walsham, i.e. the doctors, surgery, dentists, etc., are they on the plan? Are they putting their views forward? Because I know that in each of the surgeries that people are waiting longer and longer, weeks and weeks and weeks to see their GPs. And I think it would be wrong of us to ignore the plight of those people, to have maybe another surgery or whatever. I'm open to suggestions, but I am deeply concerned about their welfare. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it's a very valid point, Councillor Fredericks, that you make there. I think from my part, I'm grateful to the officers for amending the policy to provide for the early delivery. I suppose early is in the eye of the beholder to a certain extent. What is early to some people may not be to others. But so that I'm appreciative of that. I would hope that the development brief is seen more as a blueprint than anything else, and that carries significant weight as perhaps a neighbourhood plan in a different context would. And I completely agree with Councillor Seward that we should bring all stakeholders together. That means bringing the Town Council together with other elements in the process, with the County Council, the District Council, and so forth. It's very, very important that they are given, as it were, equal billing, in inverted commas, to everyone else in the process. This is a massive scheme. It's absolutely pivotal to the delivery of the local plan in terms of its housing delivery. So we need to make every effort to ensure that it's satisfactory to everyone involved, and in particular to the residents of North Walsham. So having said that, if I can hand back to you, Stuart, if you want to come back to make any responses to what members have said. Over to you.
Yeah, I'm just double checking, see if Mark's around, if Mark wants to come in and address any points. Otherwise, there he is.
Yeah, I'll take some of the I'll take the easy questions, Stuart, and I'll leave the more difficult for you to do. So Virginia asked about the historic England comments, which are included in the report. They are, I'm going to say, standard comments which they made in relation to policies on all sites, not necessarily specific just to North Walsham. And we indicated early on in this process that we would include their comments and the others of most of the other statutory consultees verbatim. So where they're encouraging us to modify the policy, improve its clarity and how it will operate, or pointing out that a policy doesn't quite comply with national guidance and the different wording would be better, our default switch, if you like, is to accept those modifications sort of without question. So those ones in particular, we've already resolved to include, so they will go in. I don't know the answer to the health issue, so I'm giving Stuart advance notice that the health question's coming in this direction. I think I was gratified to hear all of the comments, including from the Town Council, about the positivity around the actual basic concept that we're looking at here. I think the Town Council used the words exciting opportunity, and I think there is an opportunity here if we get it right. And I'd emphasise what we're really asking you to do here is to sign off on the principle, discount the other sites. Stuart put that plan up of hundreds of sites all around North Walsham. We don't want to spend the next 6 months appraising all of those options in detail. We'd like you to rule those out. That's part of the process. But your agreement in principle is essentially telling us to get on and prepare the development brief and consult on it before the Regulation 19 plan is published, and we've committed to that. Stuart's made modifications to the policy to include an express commitment to engagement with other bodies, including the Town Council, in that process. I've said publicly, I've put my hands up and said over the last year or 18 months, it's been difficult. We haven't engaged perhaps as well as we could have, but I would say there's not been much to engage on. You have not seen, and North Walsham members have not seen any information much quicker than North Walsham Town Council have. It's just that progress has been slower than we perhaps anticipated. We want to address that. We need to, it's absolutely essential that we get North Walsham Town Council and others on board and enthusiastic about the proposal. And that's really what we're asking you to do, is to give us that authority to carry on with that work. I don't want Stuart or anybody else in my team spending the next 6 months preparing, or next 3 or 4 months preparing a development brief, if you're then going to turn around and disagree to the principle of this thing and say, look elsewhere. We need to make that decision now that this is essentially the only game in town in North Walsham, and we need to commit our resources to it going forward and get the next phase of work done. And the message really is that the delivery of a good quality scheme is all going to be in the design guide work, the development brief work. The policy can only give you certain hooks and wording and all the rest of it. The key to it is going to be in this development brief, the phasing obligations, the design coding, the layout of the development, and those principles that I think we all agree have got to be done. But to get to that stage, we need you to rule out these other options and commit to the site. I didn't answer your questions then, I just went off on one, but hopefully some of the ground.
Right, thank you, Mark. But back to you, Stuart, before we go to a vote on this.
Yeah, just picking up on the health. We are producing a district-wide infrastructure delivery plan, which is having detailed discussions with all providers, including the health sector. And what we will do for North Walsham is a specific and bespoke infrastructure delivery plan that will be highlighted in the development brief process. But what members will see in the existing policy wording, we are asking for the production of a health impact assessment of the health care impacts arising from the proposed development. So as far as the development brief process goes, as part of the ongoing work, we will certainly be having those conversations with all health providers and making sure that we have clarity on that work in the development brief. I think we need to strengthen the policy wording. I think there's obviously, from what we've heard today, there are some key things we need to strengthen. But I think I'll just reiterate what Mark said, is that what we want to do now is actually start to put some meat on the bones of this policy. As I said, I'm hoping that very early on in the new year we can have that engagement, and I stress engagement with the town council, where we say, look, this is where we are so far. This is all the evidence we have so far. Let's start mapping out a way to how we take this forward. So I think, yeah, there's certain things we need to strengthen in the policy, because as Mark said, the policy is the starting position that we need, and then we will build on that with the work on the development brief. And I think ultimately we're looking for this development brief to be a supplementary planning document, so it'll have its own adoption process, which will give it a high degree of planning strength to sit alongside the local plan. So there will be a lot of work, there'll be a lot of engagement, and there will be considerable public engagement. Just picking on that briefly on the heritage side and historic England, to sit alongside this work, we've also done a heritage impact assessment, which picks up on all of the heritage assets throughout the town, including the listed buildings. There's a number of scheduled ancient monuments which are also in the town, which are mainly related to the battlefield site. I've had a discussion with the Battlefields Trust recently about the site, and that there's more local people in the town that have more knowledge of the site. I'm also in touch with all of the other projects, the regeneration projects going on in the town, just to make sure that we do this as comprehensively as we possibly can.
Yes, thank you, Stuart. Can I refer to Ian Withington? Do you want to come in at this point?
I'll mute Ian, I think.
How's that? I just wanted to reiterate the health side of it. As part of our developer contributions and viability policy, which I've yet to bring back to you, you will recall that there is a requirement for a health impact assessment of all residential proposals over 50 dwellings. We are signed up to the health protocol, which has been devised through the Norfolk Strategic Framework, which is a consultation protocol. So all major developments are consulted. We consult to the PCC and NHS England, and they can comment and seek contributions for healthcare provision as proposals come forward. That's a standard, that's in our policy, and Stuart's got that in the development brief there. But aside from that, as part of the local plan production, we've already consulted with the PCCs and NHS England, and obviously we have their comments, which will feed into the infrastructure delivery plan. So I just wanted to give that all-round assurances that those matters are addressed, but a lot of it is also down to them requesting specific contributions based on their evidence at the time of the proposal. And they will be considered at the appropriate time. However, if there is identified a specific need in relation to this development, they will have inputted at the policy stage, and it will be in the policy requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I think that probably concludes what we need to debate or discuss. I sense that we can move perhaps to a proposer and a seconder for this recommendation. Just to recap, we're recommending that we're endorsing the identified sites in the local plan. We are excluding all other sites as a consequence of that for the time being, and also referring back to the plan or graphic that Stuart put up on the screen. We're also saying that the green open spaces designated on the map that we were shown are agreed. And finally, to delegate the policy wording to the policy planning manager. So those are the recommendations set out on page 177 of your papers. Do I have a proposer, please? Councillor Toy. Do I have someone who is prepared to second Councillor Grove-Jones? Thank you very much to you both. I therefore propose to move to a roll call vote on, with it being a site allocation on this one. Are we okay on this, Emma? Can I refer to you on this?
Yes, that's fine, Chairman. I won't repeat the recommendations as you've just outlined them, but I will proceed as previously and call your names out alphabetically. If you could indicate whether you're for, against or abstaining. So starting with Councillor Brown.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Dixon.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Fredericks.
For.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
For.
Councillor Gay.
For.
Councillor Grove-Jones.
For.
Councillor Heinrich.
For.
Councillor Pearce.
For.
Councillor Punchard has left the meeting as he had to go to work. And Councillor Toy. Councillor Toy?
I think you need to unmute, yeah.
Is that for? Yeah. So that is unanimous, Chairman, for the recommendations as outlined by yourself.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Emma. Right, we move swiftly on as time is pressing to agenda item 12, which is merely a presentation. It's a statutory requirement that we have to publish annually a report identifying brownfield sites. And if I can refer this particular item to Rakesh.
I'll probably actually. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, so literally 20 seconds on this. We're required to publish a brownfield register. It's held in two parts. On part one of the register, we identify brownfield land suitable for residential development. And if you're on part two of the register, you're granted an automatic planning permission, one of these permissions in principle. We don't have any sites and don't propose to put any sites on part two of the register. We prefer people to make conventional planning applications so we can consider the schemes via that route. So part one in North Norfolk has very limited numbers of brownfield sites on it. That's because in order to get on the register, you've got to be a certain site size. It's not just any old piece of land. And you must be in a location where planning policy would permit residential development. So that's essentially sites within development boundaries of settlements, not sites in the countryside or outside of development boundaries. In all honesty, if we searched the district, looked over all 165,000 hectares or whatever it is, we'd probably find some more brownfield sites. The ones that are on the register tend to be the well-known ones. They're known from existing sources, our search for sites, call for sites, HELA documents and so on. We don't trawl all around the district specifically looking for these. People will nominate sites if they want to get themselves on the brownfield register. It has a very low profile in North Norfolk because we're essentially a rural district. And as I say, brownfield sites tend to be a relatively modest supply of housing. I would have just dealt with this under delegated powers, but historically we've brought the register to the working party primarily for information. It's something we have to publish. I don't really think you've got a choice. So I'd encourage you just to endorse the report and we'll publish it on our website. That's me done, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that. Any questions or comments on this before we move to a vote by show of hands? Anyone wanting to raise any queries? Right, that's fine. So the recommendation is to publish the brownfield register with the 2020 updates and to recommend the approach not to undertake part 2 of the register for the reasons just stated by the officer. So all those, sorry, beg your pardon, getting ahead of myself. I propose the recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Heinrich, thank you very much for seconding. All those in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hands.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much, members. So we move finally to item 13, I believe, is it? No, there's no business at my discretion. 14, there's no press and public to exclude, and I don't think we have any business under items 15 and 16. So I'm pleased to say at a very timely 2 p.m, 4 hours later, we have made a lot of progress, and thank you very much for your input and for your patience. I feel that we've really made some progress today, and I'm sure that our planning officers will be very grateful to you for all your time today. It just remains for me to say compliments of the season to everybody. If I don't see you beforehand, and we will see you again at the next meeting in January. And unless there's anything else for anyone to say, I propose we close it at 2 p.m.